Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much
He's coming.
for coming to this event. As you know, this is a high-level event to mark the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. The focus of today's event overall will be hate speech and artificial intelligence nexus, building coalitions to reclaim inclusive and safe spaces free of hatred. I am Virginia Gamba. I'm the interim or acting special advisor on the prevention of genocide. And it's my honor to open this event and pass the floor to the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco, His Excellency Omar Hilale, for his opening remarks. Ambassador.
Excellencies, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, on June 18, 2025, the international community will commemorate the 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech that was proclaimed for the first time in 2021, subsequent to the adoption of the landmark Resolution 75/309, which was presented to the General Assembly by the Kingdom of Morocco and was highly supported by the wider UN membership from all regional groups. In today's interconnected digital landscape that is marked by perplexing digital challenges, hate speech has emerged as profound global threat with far-reaching social, political, and psychological consequences on people, societies, and governments. Amplified by the rapid proliferation of social media platforms and artificial intelligence technologies, hateful rhetorics, polarization, and violence can now spread across borders in seconds, fueling all types and forms of discrimination, polarization, and violence. This escalation undermines social cohesion, threatens democratic values, and exacerbates conflicts, both online and offline. Thus, the meaningful commemoration of this International Day requires more than a moment of contemplation, but an urgent call to action to address risks posed by the misuse of artificial intelligence and to curb harm from the spread of hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. As algorithms increasingly influence content visibly, the risk of automated systems generating or amplifying hate narratives presents a new layer of complexity. Given this factual assessment, Morocco, on its capacity as the pen holder of the UN resolution on hate speech, has opted this year to focus the draft resolution on the intersection between the misuse of artificial intelligence and hate speech. Thus, we look forward to a successful conclusion of the negotiation process and another successful adoption of this milestone resolution. In this regard, allow me to praise and commend the wise commitment and able leadership of the UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres in addressing and combating the root causes of the hate speech worldwide, as testified by the recent appointment of Mr. Miguel Moratinos as the United Nations Special Envoy to combat Islamophobia, as well as the launch of the United Nations Action Plan to enhance monitoring and response to anti-Semitism. Our deepest gratitude goes to His Excellency Fleming Young, President of the General Assembly, for gracing this event with his key opening remarks. My special thanks go also to the Office of Genocide Prevention and Responsibility to Protect, our esteemed co-host. I salute the leadership of USG Gamba, my good friend, for a long time, and her team in serving as the focal point for the United Nations strategy and plan of action on hate speech. This morning, we will hear from a very distinguished panel of eminent UN official academicians and digital companies representatives to whom I present Morocco's appreciation and gratitude for accepting our invitation and for joining us to highlight the importance of building coalition to reclaim inclusive and useful space and safe space and societies free of hatred. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, under the far-sighted leadership of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, Commander of the Faithful, Morocco's unwavering attachment to the value of mutual coexistence and the rejection of hate speech is firm and constant. As stated by His Majesty King Mohammed VI in his royal message addressed to the participants in the Parliamentary Conference on Interfaith Dialogue, working together for our common future on June 2023, and I quote, "The bleak picture reflected by the conflict of beliefs in the world today should not obscure the positive and bright aspect, nor the bold initiative launched to strengthen communication and consolidate values rooted in tolerance, understanding, and coexistence between members of the international community and between followers of different faiths. It is gratifying to note that there are men and women with a keen sense of conscience, as well as responsible political decision makers and sages, enlightened thinkers in the West as in the East, in the South as in the North, who shoulder the responsibility of combating hatred and promoting dialogue and understanding between different faith, culture, and civilizations." End of quote. Under this wide royal leadership, Morocco has undertaken robust and multi-layered approach, combating legal regulation, institutional oversight, ethnic alignment, educational programs, and technical deployment to responsibly harness artificial intelligence while safeguarding privacy, human rights, and digital trust so as to address and combat hate speech. At the legal and legislative levels, Morocco's regulatory efforts are grounded in existing laws, including the 2009 Data Protection Law and the 2020 Cyber Security Law, both of which provide essential protections for personal data and digital security. Additionally, Morocco is taking decisive steps to regulate artificial intelligence through a comprehensive draft law introduced in April 2024. The proposed legislation, consisting of 17 articles, set clear definition for key terms, emphasize individual rights, ensure that the Moroccan citizens retain control over their digital experience, and mandates strict compliance with existing cybersecurity, data protection, and intellectual property laws. The draft law also envisaged the creation of National Agency for Artificial Intelligence that would act as Morocco's central authority for responsible and ethical AI governance. The structure aims to ensure consistent, accountable, and transparent oversight of artificial intelligence technologies across all sectors. Two, at the educational level, Moroccan universities and higher education institutions have undertaken several strategic initiatives to build awareness, skills, and ethical sensitivity regarding artificial intelligence, which with a particular focus on preventing its misuse, including the amplification by hate speech, notably the Al-Khawarizmi program, launched in 2019 by the Moroccan Ministry of Higher Education and the Digital Development Agency, is a national initiative aimed at advancing artificial intelligence and big data research, With a budget of approximately $6 million US. The program has funded 45 projects across 11 sectors with strong focus on healthcare, agriculture, energy, and industrial applications. Indeed, Morocco's educational efforts are not just about producing technical talent. They are deeply tied to fostering ethical and socially conscious artificial intelligence development that would harness this amplification of hate speech. 3, at the institutional level, the Kingdom is actively working to establish a dedicated national artificial intelligence agency that will serve as the central authority for supervising AI development and use across the sectors. The agency is expected to monitor compliance with AI regulations, oversee the ethical assessment of AI technologies, coordinate the implementation of national AI strategies, and advise on regulatory gaps and emerging risks, including the misuse of AI to propagate hate speech. Furthermore, the Moroccan National Commission for the Protection of Personal Data, CNDP, plays a key institutional role in ensuring AI systems comply with Morocco's Data Protection Law number 0908. CNDP has demonstrated its influence by collaborating with the National Human Rights Council to align AI regulations with human rights protections, especially in preventing discriminatory algorithmic outcomes and combating hate speech. Finally, the Digital Morocco 2030 strategy that is fully aligned with international frameworks, including the UNESCO AI ethics guidelines, outlines concrete institutional measures to ensure that AI applications are transparent and in conformity with human rights obligations to combat all forms of discrimination, most importantly, hate speech. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot conclude without emphasizing two messages. First, the paramount importance of the effective implementation of the UN doctrinary arsenal intended to promote interreligious and intercultural dialogue and counter hate speech, in particular, Rabat Plan of Action on Prohibition of Advocacy of National, Racial, and Religious Hatred, the first Plan of Action on the role of religious leaders and actors to prevent incitement to violence that can lead to atrocity crimes, and the National and United Nations Hate Speech Strategy and Action Plan, the Action Plan for Safeguarding Religious Rights, and, of course, UN General Assembly Resolution 73-328 and 75-309 and 77-318. A call to action to technology companies and developers to co-develop industry accountability frameworks that would increase transparency around their data, systems, and processes, define responsibility, and commit to defining ethical standards to mitigate the risks that artificial intelligence systems may pose in amplifying hate speech. I thank you for your participation and look forward to fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think you covered all the bases. But now it's my honor to give the floor to the Chef de Cabinet of the Office of the President of the General Assembly, who is also my good friend, Ivor Fung. Ivor, you have the floor.
USG Gamba, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to address you on behalf of the President of the General Assembly, who cannot be with us this morning. I thank the Permanent Mission of the Kingdom of Morocco, the UN Office on Genocide, Prevention, and Responsibility to Protect for convening this important meeting. Today, we observe the 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech, including in digital context. This is timely given the rapid rise of new technologies, including artificial intelligence, and the importance of implementing the Global Digital Compact adopted as part of the Pact for the Future last September. Hate speech throughout history has fueled violence, exclusion, even atrocities. The General Assembly has been at the forefront of addressing its rise, recognizing hate speech as a global concern, one that violates the universal values of tolerance and diversity, and one that cannot be justified. In 2021, the General Assembly proclaimed 18 June as the International Day for Countering Hate Speech, unanimously adopting the resolution presented by the Kingdom of Morocco. In so doing, it called for greater efforts to promote peaceful coexistence, tolerance, acceptance, and dialogue among cultures and religions, and respect for human rights. It urged member states to reject the spread of hate speech, which constitutes incitement to discrimination, hostility, and violence. And it called for raising awareness of these risks. Today, we confront the complex link between hate speech and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence holds vast potential for human development. It is already transforming how we live, learn, work, and communicate. Left unchecked, however, it can amplify hate speech with unprecedented speed and scale. Far too often, we see how artificial intelligence has become an instrument of misogyny, racism, discrimination, and hate, feeding a rise in global violence. The Global Digital Compact demands that we act decisively to counter these threats. We must ensure that the development and deployment of artificial intelligence comply with international human rights. We must promote robust governance structures for artificial intelligence and prioritize safety and respect in the digital space. And in doing so, we must promote and protect human rights, including the freedom of opinion and expression. I am encouraged by recent initiatives affirming the United Nations commitment to addressing these issues online and offline. The appointment of Mr. Miguel Angel Moratinos as Special Envoy to combat Islamophobia and the launch of the United Nations Action Plan to enhance monitoring and response to anti-Semitism both send clear message. The message that we are taking bold, principled action against all forms of hate and discrimination. But we must do more. We must invest in education as a powerful tool for promoting the values of respect, dialogue, and mutual understanding. We expect transparency and accountability from digital technology companies and developers in line with the Global Digital Compact. This is a matter of our children's future. For girls experiencing higher rates of loneliness, anxiety, depression, and suicide than just a decade ago. And for boys and young men turning to online spaces for guidance and instead receiving toxic messaging and masculinity. Excellencies, let us remember that hate also begins with words, but so does peace. Just as hate can be learned, so too can tolerance, compassion, and solidarity. We each have a role to play in turning the tide towards progress. Let us use this International Day to promote a culture of peace and ensure dignity, equality, and justice for all, everywhere. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that very strong message, Chef de Cabinet. I now have two jobs. The first one is to read to you the message that comes from the Secretary General, who has named me to represent him to read the message. And then closely, I will then read my own message. So hopefully, I will try to shorten both. So don't get confused. So this is the message from the Secretary General. Hate speech is poison in the well of society. It has paved the way for violence and atrocity during the darkest chapters of human history. Ethnic and religious minorities often bear the brunt, facing discrimination, exclusion, and harm. Today, as this year's theme reminds us, hate speech travels faster and farther than ever, amplified by artificial intelligence. Biased algorithms and digital platforms are spreading toxic content and creating new spaces for harassment and abuse. The Global Digital Compact, adopted at the Summit of the Future, offers a path forward, calling for stronger international cooperation to tackle hate online, rooted in human rights and international law, as we heard. To drown out the voices of hate, we need partnerships at every level, among governments, civil society, private companies, and religious and community leaders. We need to counter toxic narratives with positive messaging and empower people to recognize, reject, and stand up to hate speech. The United Nations Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech guides the way. The Global Principles for Information Integrity that I launched last year are also supporting and informing these efforts as we push for a safer and more humane information ecosystem. As we mark this day, let us commit to using artificial intelligence not as a tool of hate, but as a force for good. Let us stand united in the pursuit of peace, mutual respect, and understanding for all. Thus ends the message of the Secretary General. Let me now proceed with my own message. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will try to be brief. Please allow me to begin by thanking the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco, His Excellency Ambassador Omar Hilale, for his continued support in organizing this commemorative event on the 18th of June every year. This year, I would also like to thank the Human Rights Center of the University of Essex and the Garden of the Righteous Worldwide for co-organizing it. My appreciation further goes to all the members of this high-level panel who have joined us here today, both virtually and physically, to share their insights and experiences. We are aware, and we know all too well, that hate speech fuels discrimination, undermines social cohesion, and in some cases constitutes incitement to violence and a driver of conflict. Every year, the International Day for Countering Hate Speech reminds us of the long-lasting divisive impact and consequences this phenomenon has on our societies, including on our families, our friends, and our neighbors, some of whom are already in a situation of vulnerability. This year, in 1 month, we will also be marking the 30th anniversary of the 1995 Srebrenica genocide. This also will compel us to once again remember that hate speech, in most serious cases, can and has acted as a trigger for the most heinous crimes, namely genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Today, we face a challenge never seen before. Technology is evolving rapidly, but not always in a positive way. Technology is often abused, defeating the purpose for what it was initially created, serving rather than hurting humanity. Technology, with the strong potential to bring the world together, is being used to feed and fuel hate speech and attack individuals and communities based on their identity. We have seen, for example, how generative artificial intelligence, AI, among others, has been used to create and propagate fake and sexualized content online, especially targeting women and girls. Deep fakes and bots powered by AI have also contributed to spreading mis- and disinformation, at times exacerbating existing ethnic and racial tensions, enabling the proliferation of hate speech at an unprecedented speed and scope. These technologies render a sense of credibility and visibility to such hateful narratives, only to amplify them even further. We are hence reminded, today more than ever, of the importance of stepping up our collective efforts and investment to counter and address hate speech. The adoption of the Pact for the Future in September last year was a pivotal step forward in this direction. Member States committed to address the risks posed by mis- and disinformation and hate speech, including when related to misuse or abuse of AI, in a manner consistent with international law. Member States also called for stronger international cooperation in this field, with a global problem requiring a global response. This response requires amplifying the immense positive potential of technology. New technologies have presented us with opportunities to make a positive difference in situations of conflict and to accelerate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. AI-related tools can help strengthen early warning, prevention, and protection of vulnerable communities and individuals, including against the risk of atrocity crimes. Very connected to today's topic, they can help speed up the detection of and accelerate the responses to hate speech and harmful content through real-time monitoring and reporting of big data sources such as social media, reports, recordings, and photos. On this year's International Day for Countering Hate Speech, we will zoom in on the intersection between AI and hate speech. We will showcase the tireless and creative efforts that have been made to counter and address all forms of hatred, intolerance, and discrimination across the world, in response to the tools that continue being used to perpetuate them, both online and offline. We will also highlight how this has not been done, nor cannot be done single-handedly, and how strong partnerships engaging in a whole-of-society approach are instrumental to help develop systems and tools that are inclusive and ethical and aligned with human rights standards and values that uphold human dignity. We all have a role to play. The public sector, private companies, civil society, and local communities, through their engagements, can contribute to building such a system which is trusted by and beneficial for the public. Last year, my office developed and launched a comprehensive methodology for monitoring social media to identify, address, and counter online hate speech. This methodology aims at enabling more effective use of social media monitoring technology from the context of a low-tech process of manual monitoring to the latest AI-driven projects, and at promoting a greater understanding of this phenomenon online. Even more importantly, this monitoring methodology has been developed with the aim of identifying hate speech that might pose a risk of atrocity crimes in a consistent and timely manner, as well as in line with international human rights standards and the UN strategy and plan on hate speech. This effort builds upon the Office's years of engagements with tech and social media companies, with our other UN colleagues, including at the UN Working Group on Hate Speech, and with civil society and academia. I take this opportunity to express our gratitude again for the excellent insights and sustained cooperation provided by our colleagues and partners, along with the gracious support provided by the United Kingdom in facilitating this project. But more work is necessary. We continue to count on your support and collaboration in tackling this phenomenon worldwide by continuing leveraging technological advances, especially when more effort is required to fully understand their capabilities, risks, and impact in finding and addressing hate speech so that we can limit its damage. Our distinguished colleagues and guests gathered here today are powerful, living examples of these efforts, of coming together and building coalitions to stand against hatred, striving to keep pace with the fast-changing technological landscape. I encourage us all to hear their experiences, recommendations, and concerns, and to act on them. It is my hope that today's discussions can further strengthen our collaborative efforts and commitment to preserve the hard-won gains achieved to date and take this work forward. By doing so, we will continue robustly upholding human rights and advancing non-discrimination and equality. Let me conclude by echoing the words of the Secretary General at the 2019 AI Intelligence for Good Summit in 2019, saying, if we are to harness the benefits of AI and address risks, we must all work together. We must seize the moment in partnership to deliver on the promise of technological advances and harness them for common good, to bridge divides and not to push us further apart, end of quote. I want to add that this morning we celebrated the planting of the Anne Frank tree outside in the garden. Those of you that were present there, I welcome that. But Anne Frank said, like we all know, that she believed that every person was good, was born good. I'm telling you now that every child that is born without hatred. We teach hatred. We might just as well unteach it. And the AI can help us do that. Thank you. Rejoining the moderation, it's my honor to pass the floor to His Excellency Miguel Ángel Moratinos, Undersecretary General and High Representative of the Alliance of Civilizations. Miguel Ángel.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Undersecretary General Virginia Gamba, Your Excellency, Ambassador Mark Hilale, Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Morocco, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, my dear friends. I join my voice of this experience this morning celebrating the tree plant of Anne Frank. We were on the rain, great day. Before coming here, I crossed in front of somebody with the peace symbol. Then when we were standing the speeches in honor of Anne Frank, we saw a guy with a big cross and sounding the bell, peace, peace. Something has to be done. We cannot continue like that. So It is both an honor and responsibility to join you today as we mark the 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech. I'm particularly pleased to join distinguished colleagues, including Under Secretary General Virginia Gamba, the UN Acting Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, and Ambassador Mark Hilale, the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco, whose principal leadership continues to advance the work of the United Nations in the fight against hate speech. As I said before, this meeting takes place in a global context marked by deepening polarization, the resurgence of identity-based hate, and growing distrust within and among communities. In such a climate, religious and cultural diversity, which should be a source of enrichment, is too often manipulated to divide, exclude, and even incite violence. We are gathered today to address one of the most presenting and pressing challenges of our digital age, the proliferation of hate speech and the emerging role of artificial intelligence in shaping and sometimes, many times, distorting our public discourse. Around the world, we have seen this unfold in many disturbing ways. Physical and verbal attacks against persons and communities based on their religion, belief, race, or identity. These unjustifiable patterns were manifested in attacks on places of worship and sacred sites, including synagogues, mosques, churches, and temples. Quite often, properties and cultural institutions affiliated with specific communities were targeted. We have also witnessed a disturbing spike in the vilification of minority communities in mainstream and social media, and the rising normalization of hate speech and dehumanizing rhetoric in political discourse. This reality compels us to reaffirm a fundamental truth. There is no hierarchy on hatred. All forms of religion, racial discrimination are unacceptable, and all must be addressed with equal urgency and resolve. I wish to underscore the pivotal role of United Nations Alliance of Civilization. UNOSC platform plays in this effort. Since its inception, UNOSC has worked to advance understanding across cultural and religious divide, to prevent identity-based violence, and to support community in building inclusive and peaceful societies. Today, I wish to highlight two important milestones that mark our continued commitment to this mandate. First, UNOSC has developed the United Nations Action Plan to enhance monitoring and response to anti-Semitism, launched in January 2025 in close consultation with relevant UN entities, including the Office of the Special Advisor for Genocide Prevention, OHCR, and Department of Global Communication, as well as major Jewish organizations and envoys to combat anti-Semitism. I was honored to be designated as Secretary General in 2020 as UN focal point of monitoring anti-Semitism and enhancing a system-wide response, with a clear mandate to build on and strengthen existing work by the United Nations and further develop recommendations for action points to carry this work forward. At this stage, I'm very pleased that my office is working closely with the Office of Special Advisor to Prevention of Genocide and the UN College staff to develop an online learning module, and we hope that we are able to launch it before the fall. Second, I expect to you in my new designated role as United Nations Special Envoy to combat Islamophobia, a responsibility entrusted to me by Secretary General. This appointment reflects a growing awareness of the bigotry and dehumanizing rhetoric that Muslims have to quite often face in many parts of the world, for no other reason than their faith. Muslims are challenging institutional discrimination and socioeconomic restriction in several non-Muslim majority countries. Hate speech drives wedge between communities, sparks fears and anger, and may often lead to violence, which threaten peace and stability in society. Based on international human rights, hate speech online and offline that amounts to advocates of national, racial, or regional hatred that constitute incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence is prohibited. At this point, digital platforms have a responsibility to moderate hateful content and protect users for harassment without infringing on the freedom of expression. As a special envoy, I will work to ensure that the United Nations respond with moral clarity and operational coherence. Our approach will be informed by evidence, rooted in human rights, and focus on supporting member states and civil society and developing meaningful, result-oriented approaches. Just as with anti-Semitism, the fight against Islamophobia requires more than condemnation. It requires capacity, consistency, and courage. Distinguished delegate, the United Nations Alliance of Civilization has long recognized that hate speech is not merely a matter of words. It's a precursor to violence, exclusion, and in some cases, atrocity crimes. When hatred is normalized, whether on the street or in cyberspace, it chips away our shared humanity. What is new and increasingly urgent is the scale, speed, and sophistication with which such a speed is spread, enabled by algorithms, amplified by bots, and shaped by artificial intelligence systems that often operate without transparency or accountability. AI has the potential to be a power tool for good, to detect harmful content, translate across culture, and expand access to knowledge. But left unchecked, it can also reinforce bias, automatic discrimination, and fuel the very narrative we seek to dismantle. Recognizing both the immense potential and challenges posed by IA, the United Nations has undertaken significant steps to ensure its ethical and inclusive development. The Global Digital Compact, adopted at the Summit of the Future last year, set a comprehensive framework to guide digital cooperation and AI governance, highlighting three key objectives. First, inclusive development. Second, fair, equitable access. And third, establishing transparency guidelines and accountability measures. To quote the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, I quote, "It brings the world together around a shared vision, one where technology serves humanity, not the other way around." End of the quote. Other efforts across the UN system, including the Secretary General High-Level Advisory Board on Artificial Intelligence, UNESCO recommendation on ethical artificial intelligence, and the International Telecommunication Union flagship AI for Good program. Similarly, emphasis the importance of global solidarity and development and governance of AI. In support of this effort, I highlight the human dimension of artificial intelligence as a new priority area in the UNOSC Plan of Action 2024-2026, which I presented to the UNOAC group of friends last year. At UNOSC, we focus on enforcing the human aspect into artificial intelligence. So I convened 3 global dialogues in Geneva in 2023, 2024, and April 2025. We brought together member states, UN entities, and AI experts in a series of dialogues to exchange views on the pros and cons of artificial intelligence. In this context, we cannot outsource our moral judgment to machine, nor can we afford to treat online hate as a virtual problem with no real-world consequences. The genocide in Rwanda was preceded by hate speech on radio. Today, such a speech travels faster and further, and we must be just as vigilant. Excellencies, our response to the challenges posed by hate speech must be unified and indivisible. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, along with other forms of religious intolerance and racial hatred, often stem from the same toxic ecosystem of fear, misinformation, scapegoating, and political opportunism. They are not isolated crises. They are interrelated symptoms of a broader erosion of empathy and solidarity in our societies. Manifestations of hate are often amplified by AI-driven content. Content-driven AI demonstrate how prejudice can be programmed and how silence can be systemic. In the same vein, cannot outsource our moral judgment to machine. Nor can we afford to treat online hate as a virtual problem with no real-world consequences. That is why our efforts must not be siloed. They must be mutually reinforcing. In this regard, I commend the initiative of member states, including the Kingdom of Morocco, that continue to champion interfaith dialogue and multicultural coexistence at the national and international level. This effort demonstrates that promoting harmony is not a soft idea. It is a strategic imperative for peace, resilience, and sustainable development. I recall UNOSC 9 Global Forum, which was hosted by the Kingdom of Morocco in the historical city of Fez, was a powerful symbol of cultural and religious diversity, as it should be. My dear friend, looking ahead, the United Nations Alliance of Civilization remains committed to strengthening partnership with member states, faith leaders, youth organizations, and academic institutions. Through education, dialogue, and grassroots engagement, we aim to build a society in which diversity is embraced as a virtue, not fear as a threat. Let's remember, hatred may begin with words, but it always ends with violence. If we are to be true to the UN Charter, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we must move from intention to action, from rhetoric to responsibility. In closing, let's remind ourselves technology reflects our values. If we want algorithms to promote empathy, we must first encode empathy into our institutions and our policies. We must ensure that in the age of artificial intelligence, it's the human intelligence, and above all, human conscience that guide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Melissa Fleming, Under-Secretary General for Global Communications. Melissa, you have the floor.
Thank you, my dear colleague, USG Gamba, and I would just like to thank Ambassador Hilale and USG Moratinos and the CDC of the PGA for these meaningful words. And I hope that what I will say will, if not re-emphasize some of the points that you made, but also enhance what they said. And I particularly was struck by your call to action that we should deploy AI to unlearn hate. So, as previous speakers have said, we are focusing today on the implications of AI on this 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech. These are tools that are already dramatically changing the way that we consume information. They are integrated into our everyday applications. We may not even realize that they are fueling the tools that we use all the time, and they are changing things at breakneck speed. And they do shape our understanding of the world. So I think what you just said, Miguel, on how we train these applications is so is going to have so much influence over how our society is formed and evolves. So we also need to look at the great promise that AI holds. We do know that if deployed responsibly, and here at the UN there are different factions, those of us who work on the prevention of genocide and those of us who work on information integrity are worried and awake at night every day on the implications, but those who are working on the SDGs are actually quite excited about many of the applications of AI in health, in education. I'm sure we'll hear from our Youth Affairs ASG soon, and in connecting people with information that they never could possibly have imagined was accessible to them. We could even deploy AI as a tool to tackle the spread of dangerous hate speech, to be used, and I think we just heard that we are using it to monitor hate speech and to raise alarms about it. We need it to be deployed as part of a healthy, vibrant information ecosystem. However, we are seeing grave risks. We do see already, and I think we heard many examples already of how AI is being misused to create and disseminate false and hateful information at scale. And at scale, I'd like to emphasize, it can be so easy, the content can be so much more easily produced. It's very often fake videos and photos can't be distinguished between real photos. The barriers for those seeking to create such content are much lower, and the financial and strategic gain are unfortunately incentives for creating such information. It costs next to nothing to create AI content with minor human intervention. And some of these consequences of, for example, these deep fakes, images, audio, and video, we're also seeing being deployed in the theater of war, from Ukraine to Gaza to Sudan, triggering diplomatic crises, inciting unrest, creating confusion and chaos on the ground. Unfortunately, it's also undermining the work of UN agencies as false information spreads about our intentions and the work that we do. We're most disturbed about how these tools are being used to demonize or dehumanize vulnerable people, refugees, women, migrants, or minorities, and to spread content that is anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, racist, and xenophobic. And we know from history what this kind of hate can do. In extreme cases, it can lead to violence and terrible atrocities. The kind of atrocities that echo through history, Auschwitz, Rwanda, Srebrenica, and all of these atrocities were fueled by hate speech. And it's very concerning that now they would be able to travel faster and deeper than the radio stations that spread the hate in times gone by. So we will never give up, though, against our fight on hate, and we are ramping up our efforts, as you've heard, and that's why we've been working so hard to strengthen what we're calling information integrity, and especially in the age of AI. And that's why it is so helpful to have the UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech, because it convenes broad coalitions. It's beyond the UN to do this, and I think we've heard of, in many of the statements, the need for this all of society, member states to be involved, and civil society. We're seeing some encouraging developments, and many of you mentioned the Global Digital Compact. 193 states signed on to it, and it does contain concrete pledges by all member states, and that is to make our online environment safe for all, and to promote information integrity, tolerance, and respect in the digital space, while advancing the progress on AI and making it equitable. At the same time, as we heard in the Secretary General's statement, the UN and the Secretary General were proud to launch a very powerful new advocacy tool last June. I'm proud that my department was involved in drafting it, and it is the UN Global Principles on Information Integrity, which is a set of recommendations to help create healthier information environments while upholding essential human rights. And this has recommendations for governments, for tech companies, as well as AI developers, and includes guidance for researchers, academics, and the media. We hope that these principles can act as a kind of beacon for change that sees tech platforms enforce their own safety rules, and not only the existing social media platforms who actually have very good standards written into their rules, but we just need them to actually enforce them. And we need the new AI companies also to realize that they have a huge responsibility in launching these very powerful platforms. And we have to stop practices that incentivize and even monetize harmful information, disinformation, and hate speech. So these are urgent challenges, as we know. Every time we look at our phone, there's something changes. But history has shown if we build coalitions and focus on solutions, we can achieve great things. We can't settle for an information ecosystem that harms us. And we need to have an information space that is designed for humans, and where everyone is able to express themselves freely without fear of attack, and where the most reliable and accurate and humane information is the most accessible, and where AI innovation helps rather than hinders humanity, as we collectively, and there are more of us than the haters, strive for peace, dignity, and equality on a healthy planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. And I know, having been a teacher for many years, 45 minutes is the attention span, but you'll have to push yourselves a little bit longer. We have 2 video messages and 1 last speaker in this high-level panel, and then we will just pause to reshuffle the posts and do the baton for the second session that happens immediately afterwards. So without further ado, I would like to ask for the video of His Excellency Amandeep Singh Gill, and the Secretary General and UN Special Envoy for Digital and Emerging Technologies, that is joining us now. So can we please run the video?
Excellencies, colleagues, friends, it's a pleasure to join you today for this timely discussion at the nexus between hate speech and artificial intelligence. Thanks to the Office on Genocide Prevention and the Permanent Mission of Morocco for their invitation. I'd like to focus my intervention on how technology affects hate speech, the tools at our disposal, and how we can make full use of them. Hate speech was not invented by artificial intelligence, nor by any other technology. New technologies, however, can and do serve as tools for spreading hate speech. Today's concerns about AI magnifying hate speech are legitimate, but not new. Echoes of these concerns can be found throughout history with the introduction of radio, television, social media, and even as far back as Gutenberg's printing press. What's new, however, is the scale, potential audience, and more importantly, the capacity for AI to automatically generate hate speech. Hate speech is regulated at the national level and lacks a universal definition. Legislation should strive to balance the right to freedom of expression and to hold opinions without interference with the principle of equality and non-discrimination. Tackling hate speech should not mean suppressing content we disagree with. Nonetheless, hate speech has been identified as a precursor to violence and atrocity crimes, including genocide. Hate speech is particularly linked to violence against minorities, and it sits at a tri-junction with misinformation and disinformation, a deadly cocktail. Against this backdrop, artificial intelligence poses novel challenges. In particular, it can dramatically expand the attack surface for malicious actors. Consider, for instance, the potential use of advanced large language models to generate inflammatory speech and false information at scale, targeting vulnerable populations. Conversely, AI can also assist in tackling hate speech through the automatic detection and removal of hateful online content. AI systems based on natural language processing and sentiment analysis can automatically recognize offensive online content and take appropriate action. However, this is not a perfect science. There are gaps and glitches. Humans are still needed. This leads me to the second point. What can we do about it? The answer is simple. We need to work together. The UN Plan of Action on Hate Speech highlights the vital role of partnerships involving tech and social media companies in addressing hate speech. This vision resonated with member states when they adopted the Global Digital Compact by consensus last September. In the compact, they agreed to strengthen international cooperation to address hate speech, misinformation, and disinformation. They also called on tech companies and developers to create solutions to counter hate speech. For AI, these include authenticity certification, labeling, and watermarking. Let me conclude. Artificial intelligence is only as good as the data and the guardrails that underpin it. The Global Digital Compact can help us close two crucial gaps in ensuring that AI reduces hate speech. By creating a global dialogue on AI governance, it'll ensure that over 100 countries not part of major multilateral processes finally have a voice. This is crucial as it is often small and least developed countries that are the most vulnerable to the pitfalls of AI, including hate speech. In parallel, the compact calls for regular scientific assessments of AI's power and implications through an international independent scientific panel. The compact also provides a human rights-based framework to strengthen cooperation with tech companies and ensure they actively address hate speech. Thank you very much.
As you see, we have many tools to deal with this. Shame on us if we can't. So now we hear from Madame Dieng, also on video, as African Union Special Envoy on the prevention of genocide and other mass atrocities. Please, if we can have the video from His Excellency Dieng.
Let me first thank you for inviting me to participate in this high-level event to commemorate the 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech. Its topic, Hate Speech and the Artificial Intelligence Nexus, building coalition to reclaim inclusive and safe spaces free of hatred, could not be more important today. When I was appointed as the first special envoy of the African Union for the prevention of genocide and other mass atrocities in April 2024, a special emphasis was given to my mandate on the urgency to effectively counter hate speech. The priorities of my mandate include the identification of risk indicators of the ideology of hate, genocide, and hate crimes, and timely intervention to reverse negative trends on the African continent. To this effect, one of my main tasks is to closely monitor the misuse of media platforms as well as encourage member states to adopt necessary policies that would further monitor and regulate the media and prevent the exploitation and propagation of extremist messages that incite hate crimes and genocide. The emphasis on countering hate speech was unfortunately justified by current trends on the continent. From Eastern DRC to Sudan and South Sudan, from countries of the Sahel to the brutal handling of sub-Saharan migrants in North Africa, atrocity crimes are on the rise, fueled by hate speech from politicians, armed groups, and influencers, propagated at an unmatched speed through social media. Produced within Africa itself or in African diaspora worldwide by simple individuals or troll factories, hate messages reproducing colonial stereotypes, religious bigotry, and propagating disinformation and misinformation are circulated today on an industrial scale within social media platforms, dehumanizing anti-communities who are then presented as legitimate targets for violence. Often expressed in local languages, giving them an almost instinctive communal validation, these hate messages appeal to fears, despair, and emotions, which are sometimes rooted in the memory and narratives of past atrocities. As we gather today to commemorate the International Day for Countering Hate Speech, one can only fear how the power of artificial intelligence can further expand the impact of hateful social media posts, which have literally become effective weapons of war in most conflict settings in Africa. Fake and digitally engineered images and videos, recycling and improving the emotional performance of hate narratives in anxious communities can now reach almost every household, every youth in a family, and mobilize violently for retribution or preventive strikes, all through multitudes of digital posts flooding daily mobile phone communications. These trials have begun to be presented to African judiciaries. On 3rd April this year, a Kenyan court allowed a case to proceed against Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, over the fueling of ethnic violence in Ethiopia through the circulation of hate speech, resulting in ethnically motivated assassinations. This court case could be the first in a long list seeking accountability for allowing hate speech to circulate freely. Yet, prevention remains the best approach for countering hate speech. Court cases should become incentives for social media giants to actively join coalitions supporting the creation and protection of inclusive and safe communication spaces. The generalization of AI use in social media, the tremendous capabilities this technology unlocks for the industrial production of digital content raises the imperative to increase our collective investment in moderation, monitoring, fact-checking, and countering hateful content. Artificial intelligence can indeed be a powerful tool for combating hate speech. The powers of AI also need to be geared towards supporting inclusivity, social cohesion, and reconciliation. I stand ready to support all efforts towards this goal so that digital communication stop feeding the African battlefronts and start providing the safe and inclusive spaces that are needed for peace, democracy, and economic development to flourish. I thank you.
Thank you. And now we have the unenviable task of closing the high-level panel with the remarks of Assistant Secretary General Felipe Paulier, who is the Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. So it's fitting that we finish with the youth. It's all yours.
There it is. Great. Dear colleagues and delegates, first of all, thank you to the Permanent Mission of Morocco and the Office of the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide for organizing this important event. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Virginia, for convening us. I'm Felipe Paulier, Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, and I'm here not only in my institutional capacity, but also as a person that is part of a generation that lives and thrives in digital spaces where connection and conflict collide. Hate speech doesn't come out of nowhere. It grows in isolation, in inequality, and it grows in online platforms where algorithms spread division quickly and widely. Hate speech is spreading at an unprecedented scale and speed via artificial intelligence. And it's doing it with error-prone algorithms that are multiplying hate's reach. Approximately 80% of young users witness hate on social platforms every month, with nearly half reporting personal experiences of cyberbullying. As recently as during the Economic and Social Council Youth Forum last April, here, we witnessed young activists sharing hear messages of inclusion and receiving hate speech in return. This must stop. And the truth is that AI can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Youth are not passive victims. They are architects of change. I want to use my time today to share about 5 steps that we could take together as a global community to move from reaction to action. First and foremost, it's about connecting the disconnected, because still over 1.8 billion rural residents lack internet access. And without digital connectivity, full participation, and of course, protection eventually, is impossible. Second, we need to hold technology boards accountable. Transparent standards and ethical oversight must combat algorithms that weaponize hate. Third, we need to protect digital identities. Our online selves are extension of who we are, and they deserve dignity and real-world protections. Fourth, we need to elevate youth leadership, not as a footnote, but as a loud, commanding scripts in online and offline policymaking spaces. And last but not least, we need to support mental resilience, because hate speech is not just offensive, it breaks spirits, and youth are disproportionately affected. So strong mental health frameworks and digital tools must be central to our approach. The mental health consequences of hate speech are profound. And let me be clear, this is not just a youth issue, it's a societal issue. When hate speech takes root, it threatens the fabric of our communities. It weakens empathy, it corrodes trust, and it normalizes exclusion. And this is especially dangerous for those already marginalized, be it because of their gender, their race, their religion, their ethnicity, or their own identity. The good news, again, is that young people are not just victims of hate speech. They are also our most powerful agents in countering it. In 2024, the United Nations adopted the Pact for the Future, and we calling upon member states to seize opportunities and to mitigate risks associated with new technologies. During this Summit of the Future also, we reaffirmed that the future of multilateralism needs to give a central role to the participation of young people. So who better to lead this transformation than young people? As the Secretary General Guterres reminds us, confronting hate requires boldness. And while hate spreads in cliques, so can courage. And youth are lightening the fire. And with the right backing, we can turn a wildfire of hate into a wave of hope. So let's co-create these spaces grounded in respect, in dignity, and unity that brings generations together. Let's turn hate into hope. Thank you, Virginia.
For this. Now I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to call to this table the next segment people. They will be addressing the decoding the future beyond prompts and algorithms. So I need to ask our new moderator, Mrs. Benchoukihi from Morocco, to take her place here. I'm calling Dr. Abdellatif Ben Sherifa, Dean of the College of Humanities, Political and Social Sciences, Head Public Policy Center, International University of Rabat. I'm calling Dr. Gregory Stanton, founder and chairman of Genocide Watch. And I'm calling Mr. David Green, senior staff attorney and civil liberties director, Electronic Frontier Foundation. The new moderator will explain to you that we're also being joined by video with 3 very important experts. And after all of that, we are going to come back. All the high-level panel will come back, and we will have a 1-hour interactive where we will hear the statements of member states. So thank you very much for your patience, and I myself will see you back in about 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you again for staying along. I know we have a lot of speakers, but this is again to get views from academicians and people on the ground, and also from UN officials and diplomats. So with this second segment, we have distinguished panels coming from different backgrounds, those who are with us in person, and also 3 speakers joining us from different time zones. I know that it's getting really late in Silicon Valley, so sincere thanks for staying with us. Without further ado, I will start with our first panelist. It's Dr. Abdellatif Ben Sharifa. He's joining us from Rabat. We're honored to have him. He's the Dean of College of Humanities, Political and Social Sciences of the International University of Rabat, as well as the head of the Public Policy Center, a PhD holder with different focuses, but today we will hear from him on this particular aspect. Without further ado, Dr. Ben Sharifa, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to attend the proceedings of this high-level event. And I would like to focus on one aspect that has been identified in the resolution, which is the promotion of interreligious and intercultural dialogue and tolerance in countering hate speech. And I would like to share with you specifically some of the salient features that make up the distinctive experience of Morocco in this regard. Indeed, Morocco has accumulated a relatively long track record and rich track record, particularly in the last 26 years, that is under the rule of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, and managed to face hate discourse and extremism and discrimination, and promote at the same time interreligious and intercultural dialogue. Because the time constraints, I'm gonna identify 3 major aspects in this area. I'm thankful to Ambassador Omar Hilale because he already took over some of the technical, organizational, institutional aspects which are upcoming as far as the management of artificial intelligence implications. One aspect actually comes from the very specifics of the Moroccan composition itself. I think it's important to recall that Morocco is, in terms of historical makeup, a melting pot in which different populations, groups, religions, ethnicities, through history, grow together and lived together. And there has been a particular aspect in which the coexistence of this diversity has to be taken into consideration. In March 2011, for the first time, the Moroccan constitution specifically spelled out in no vague terms the specifics of this composition, in that its preamble announced that Morocco population is forged by the conversions of its Arab, Islamist, Berber, Amazigh, and Saharan Hassani components, nourished and enriched by its African, Andalusian, Hebraic, and Mediterranean tributaries. So these are exactly the origins and the ethnic diversities that I have in mind. And this acknowledgement at the constitutional level is to be seen additionally as a deterrent against any form of hatred that might jeopardize inclusion, diversity, and human rights, and undermine cohesion and erode common values. At the same time, of course, the whole legislative corpus has to follow and take that into consideration. I would like also to mention a second specific aspect of Morocco, which has much to do with the very nature of the status of the king himself. As you probably know, additionally, the king of Morocco is the commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'minin, which is a prerogative, a set of prerogatives that are not just honorific, but they have effective implications, particularly when it comes to face all forms of extremism and tolerance. And in this aspect, the track record of the direct implication of the commandership of the faithful can be identified at several levels, whether it be through the formulation of a specific paradigm of Islamic school of law, which is moderate in nature, whether in terms of implication in the way education takes over all forms of hate speech and intolerance and exclusion processes, or even in societal matters. Just let me remind all of us that, among other things, in 2004, Morocco initiated a deep revolutionary reform in its legal status for the so-called Mudawwana, which actually, excuse me, the Mudawwana has been in my desire to sum up the paper, so it's a set of innovations in the corpus related to the personal status, which took over the marriage conditions and the legal status of women by and large in this area. The other aspect that came out of this particular commandership of the believers' status is the creation of an institution called the Muhammadian Rabita, or League. It's actually a foundation of public interest, which specifically is geared towards, one, fighting extremism, two, rehabilitating extremists, which are detainees. For instance, up to now, we have had 311 detainees for extremism activities that have been rehabilitated, freed, and reinserted within society. It takes over the treatment of educational material at the level of primary and secondary schools to make sure that no hatred content is to be found in there. And of course, there is the treatment of the Hebraic component that is part of the Moroccan heritage, of course. In this instance, we need to mention that under the leadership of His Majesty, this issue is treated in ways that preserve that heritage, whether it be through preserving Jewish cemeteries throughout the country. There is a whole program dedicated to that. or through the preservation and protection of synagogues and all material and symbolic features that make up the distinction of the Jewish component in Morocco. The final element, which I think is important to mention, is about the implication of Morocco at the international arena when it comes specifically to fighting hate speech and promoting interreligious and intercultural dialogue. Several initiatives are recorded in this area. One, in March 2019, King Mohammed VI met with Pope Francis and spoke out for the rights of Christians in Morocco and Palestinians in Jerusalem and the occupied territories. Also, the Marrakesh Declaration on the Rights of Religion Minorities in predominantly Muslim majority communities of October 2018 was adopted under the same impetus. And in June 2022, Morocco organized jointly with the UNESCO project called Aladdin and United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, the Tangier dialogue that brought together the world's leading politicians, thinkers, and practitioners to debate the future of the relations between the Arab region and the West. So to sum up, and I don't want to take more of your time, the leadership of the King of Morocco in the area of fighting hate speech and promoting inclusion is to be seen at different level. Constitutional, we have a constitution that protects all components, that promotes convivencia within the society. The Amazigh component itself has been treated. In 2002, we have an institute that is dedicated specifically to that, and so on. And two, by taking over the societal antagonistic problems that have been prevalent in the past, in particular through major reforms like the Mudawana, for instance. And finally, the implication is extremely strong at the international arena. And I have mentioned quickly very few examples, and I will be glad to elaborate on any of these issues when time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ben Sharifa, for your insightful remarks. Our second panelist is Dr. Gregory Stanton. He's the founder and chairman of Genocide Watch, which is an organization aimed at predicting, preventing, and combating hate speech. So without further ado, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here at the United Nations, an organization that I firmly believe in. I believe, in fact, that despite some who would point to failures at the United Nations, I must point right back to the nation states that have failed. And I must say that it is time, I believe, we are at a dawn of a new era. We're at the dawn of an era in which human beings are going to be able to communicate directly to each other. AI is going to make it possible for us to finally overcome the Tower of Babel. We're going to be able to talk to each other in our own languages and be understood. Think also of the incredible opportunities that AI offers us in scientific discoveries, in design, in so many areas in which we can work together as one human race, because there's only one race, the human race. And that is how this AI is going to make it possible for us. But what I want to talk to you today is about a problem that AI also poses to us. It is a problem of misuse of AI, because AI is already being used to facilitate hate speech. It is already being used to incite genocide. And I have interviewed people who, were involved in this because I was the person that wrote the UN resolutions that created the Rwandan Tribunal. I interviewed Ferdinand Nahimana, who is the publisher of Kangura and the head of Radio Television Libre de Mille Collines, the hate radio in Rwanda. They used the media that were then available to spread hate speech, to call Tutsi cockroaches, to dehumanize Tutsis, and to make them therefore vulnerable in a culture of genocide, to exterminate over 800,000 people. And we stood by and did not stop it. And we could have stopped it. I was in the State Department at the time. I knew something that most people didn't know because I had top secret clearance, and that is that we had thousands of U.S. Marines right off the coast of East Africa who could have gone into Rwanda on the first day of that genocide, and our president decided not to use them out of political fear. What I want to tell you today, though, is that we have ways now already to counter hate speech, because the hate speech was the key to understanding the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar. Facebook facilitated the spread of hate speech and incitement, and it directly led to that genocide and that forced displacement of over 1 million refugees. It has also been used by people in India to spread the hate speech about love jihad, in which Muslims are accused of marrying Hindus so that they can convert them to Hinduism, to Islam. And they therefore portray every mixed marriage as an insidious conspiracy that threatens the purity of Hinduism. It's an electrical charge that's intended to polarize Indian Muslims and Hindus against each other. And I know this will be hard for some of you to believe, but Yazidi women are still being sold today in France by ISIS on Facebook. Facebook knows this, and yet have not stopped it. Now, some people think the answer to this is lawsuits. So Rohingya and Yazidi plaintiffs and lawyers in Bangladesh and France are filing lawsuits to hold Meta accountable for its role in these genocides and in this hate speech. But suing Meta is going to require huge resources, of course. And is that even the best way to deal with this problem? Because I'm not convinced that Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and their employees really want to be complicit in genocide. They just want to maximize use of their platforms and increase their profits. One of the failures also that we face is that many of the people who run these platforms at Meta, X, Google, YouTube, and other social media are absolutists about free speech. Now, part of that is because they've grown up in the United States where we have a First Amendment that is misinterpreted by some people as being absolutist, when in fact, they don't understand that incitement to genocide or to commit any crime is not protected speech. They also don't recognize how hate speech can create a genocidal culture. I've seen that in Rwanda, because I lived in Rwanda 5 years before that genocide and saw it coming, and even went to the president and warned him that it would come. Now, Meta has appointed a review board, and I've been following it right from the start, and I thought it was a very hopeful sign. But it usually has acted too slowly to take down hate speech and incitement in time to prevent it from going viral. It's a good intention, but it's too slow. So the answer, I believe, is this. It is not to take down the hate speech. It's not censorship. It is to answer it it is the Jeffersonian approach to dealing with harmful speech. Jefferson did not believe you should censor.
Mr. Stanton,
He
if you could
believed-
wrap up, please.
He believed that you should have more speech, that you should answer it. So what Genocide Watch is doing today with a memorandum of understanding with the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide is we're standing up a corporation. We're calling it the Word Institute that will develop AI, artificial intelligence, in conjunction with the AI companies and the social media companies to develop the technology, the software that can be integrated into their platforms to actually answer hate speech. Now, only AI is fast enough to do that. And that is why we have organized this corporation. It's already incorporated. And we are going to work with these social media companies, with the UN, and with other institutions. Our own hope, and we've already talked to Pope Francis about this before he died, is to harness the resources of the Roman Catholic Church, of synagogues, of mosques, of Muslim leaders around the world. Because with these religious inputs, with the training that they can provide to the artificial intelligence programs that we hope to develop, they will be able to answer hate with love. I believe that is the answer, because I believe that the force that made us all is, in fact, love. And I like to say this, that the force personally expressed is love. The force socially expressed is justice. That's why I believe in the UN. It's why I believe that we have to develop the language necessary to answer hate speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stanton, for your remarks. Now I'll give the floor to our third panelist, Mr. David Green. He is a senior staff attorney and civil liberties director at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and also an adjunct professor at the University of San Francisco of School of Law. So please, you have the floor.
Great, thank you all. I'm really honored to be here for this extremely important discussion about an extremely important issue. And I'm here representing Electronic Frontier Foundation. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary this year, the world's very first NGO dedicated to digital rights. In fact, when we were founded, the term digital rights wasn't a term yet, but we did talk about making sure that that people took all the rights they had with them online, the rights they enjoyed offline, they took them online. Hate speech, as we all know, is a serious problem on social media and online generally, and has been for many years. And it's proved to be a persistent problem. And some of the difficulty in addressing it stems both from the sheer volume of speech across social media platforms and other online platforms, and in the inherent difficulty in identifying hate speech, which, as we know, does not have a single definition, which varies culturally, contextually, and situationally. And as we all know, the same words can be benign in one context and hateful in another. And while sometimes what is hateful speech might be very obvious, and other times it's hotly disputed. As we've heard a little bit of today, artificial intelligence tools may be a promising and important tool in identifying and addressing hate speech online, but it's also important to recognize them as tools and not solutions. Indeed, AI, especially when it's paired with automated moderation decisions like deletion or downranking, can have serious freedom of expression implications. I am primarily a freedom of expression lawyer, and I believe I was invited here because of that expertise, so I'm going to dedicate my time here to discussing the freedom of expression implications. As you all know, the UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech and Resolution A75-09 and the Rabat Plan of Action all acknowledge the importance in considering freedom of expression when seeking to address hate speech. As the plan of action explains, addressing hate speech does not mean limiting or prohibiting freedom of speech. It means keeping hate speech from escalating into something more dangerous, particularly incitement to discrimination, hostility, and violence, which is prohibited under international law. But as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights explained in the Rabat Plan of Action, properly balancing freedom of expression and prohibition of incitement to hatred is no simple task. The Rabat Plan then goes on to emphasize the necessity of considering context before taking any adverse action against speech that might be potentially hateful. So while AI, and I also should note that I agree disagree a little bit with my speaker. I don't believe that some of the heads of these online companies are free speech absolutists, but I believe that they do want to avoid the very difficult, it's an excuse to avoid the very difficult task of actually trying to maintain a platform that maximizes speech, but also confront the realities of the difficulties and the problems of actually having to moderate those platforms. So while AI may provide great assistance with the problems of scale, since human review of all potentially harmful posts is practically impossible, it's not a significant help in evaluating context and ultimately distinguishing hateful speech from political advocacy, assertions of identity, or in considering cultural complexity, as we heard, we've heard several speakers before mention that these are ultimately humans are still needed here, and that we need the human conscious to guide us in these decisions. As researchers have found recently, some AI tools are actually ill-suited for hate speech actioning, and that they tend to default to fairness, which means you're treating everyone the same online, which doesn't take into account marginalization and power imbalances, which are so important in trying to distinguish hate speech from non-hateful speech. Research has also shown that AI continues to be both over-inclusive and under-inclusive in identifying hate speech online. This is seen both of its use in social media content moderation and its use as its own safety measure for AI chatbots. We've heard a lot today about how AI has the capacity to produce hate speech, and the internal controls that are built into that, the safety measures built to that, often overcorrect and shut out much speech. So I'm going to concentrate on two subject matters areas examples, just because there's been a lot of recent research into them, not because I'm not trying to lift these up particularly, but just there has been recent research. First, with LGBTQ plus speech has been the subject of a great deal of over-inclusive and under-inclusive moderation. It is much LGBTQ speech is removed, while too much hate speech directed at that community remains online. In GLAADS, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation's recently released 2025 Social Media Safety Index. Platforms frequently over-moderated legitimate LGBTQ expression, including wrongful takedowns of accounts and creators mislabeling of LGBTQ content as adult or explicit, unwarranted demonetization and shadow banning. As a 2023 paper found, the safety systems in the image generator DALL-E blocked image requests when the word transgender was included, thus erasing transgender people from that system. And many other generative AI systems suffer from the same problem. In an understandable effort to keep their tools from producing hate speech, they eliminate references to marginalized identities completely from their systems. And indeed, the original shared AI training data set, the C4 data set, was designed specifically to exclude any information that might be considered offensive. So while most AI systems have now moved past the C4 database, the training sets are now more opaque and more difficult to study and audit. Second, research in the last 2 years have also shown that AI tools have disproportionately flagged and taken automatic action against pro-Palestinian speech. This is obviously a result of the conflict. But this is just, again, another example where organizations such as Human Rights Watch have found that the hate speech standard for example, as rolled out by Meta, the level of confidence was lowered, so as in the understandable desire to try and combat anti-Semitic speech, but end up with a lot of over-moderation of pro-Palestinian speech. And this mirrored other contexts in which AI consistently over-moderated similar speech, such as in the documentation of war crimes in Syria, for example. And the 2024 report looking back on content moderation of speech about the Sheikh Jarrah incident found similar patterns. So it just, and I need to wrap up, but just a few other points. Another hazard in using AI, not just to flag and identify speech for human review, but for automated decision-making and taking down, it raises the issue of prior restraint, which, as we know, is barred by numerous international legal systems, including the Inter-American system, and would violate various international prohibitions on required upload filtering, as barred, for example, by the EU Digital Markets Act. And lastly, there are serious competition concerns with the rush to embrace AI as a solution for the problem of hate speech. Companies tend to piggyback on each other's models. So, for example, Meta's decisions will be adopted by smaller companies or use the same base LMs and customize them, but bias on the base models is spread. So just with some recommendations for moving forward, most who study this area tend to coalesce around three recommendations regarding transparency, that the implementation of notice and takedown mechanisms, so someone should be notified when their speech is flagged and given the opportunity to contest that, that there should be full transparency regarding governmental requests for content removal on the basis of hate speech, and that there should be full transparency about automation and machine learning in AI, and that those systems should be open for audit and review so that we can have confidence that they are working and adequately combating hate speech while respecting freedom of expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gregory Green, for your remarks. Now we'll move to our fourth panelist, Ms. Gabriella Gillum. She is a human rights manager and expression and standards lead at Meta. So without further ado, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, my name is Gabrielle, and I work on the smart team at Meta, based out of London. First of all, I want to thank you very much for inviting Meta to this event to mark the 4th International Day for Countering Hate. I'm very honored to be here. UN partners are a critical voice amongst external stakeholders to receive feedback on Meta's policies and how our tools are being used around the world. And so we very much value the opportunity to take part in this conversation and hear your perspective as we consider how best to serve our communities. So once again, thank you for having us today. I'd like to do two things. First, I'd like to briefly touch on changes we made to our policies in January earlier this year and how we use AI as a tool for moderation. And secondly, I'll briefly touch on some human rights considerations as part of the development and deployment of our AI tools. But before I get into that, I just wanted to highlight that Meta has a corporate human rights policy in which the company makes commitments to respect the UN guiding principles on business and human rights and a number of international, regional, and thematic human rights treaties. And so the work of my team is to implement that policy. Now, turning to those recent changes, that included changes to our hateful conduct policy. And this has sometimes led to a perception that Meta had ceased to do any kind of content moderation. So I came here today to reiterate that we remain steadfast in our commitment to upholding our community standards, which include hateful conduct, misinformation, and inauthentic behavior, amongst others. So what do these changes mean? We decided to simplify our policies to allow more debate on certain topics, including immigration and gender. Now, some may disagree, but as has been discussed today, there is no legally agreed definition of hate speech. And much of the decisions that need to be made have to be made in a very contextual manner. It's very much about the nuance in the language, who's the speaker. So these issues remain. But it's worth remembering that we do keep many other policies that can be relevant, from bullying and harassment to violent incitement. We also continue to prohibit a wide range of the most extreme attacks based on protected characteristics, including calls for harm, harmful stereotypes and slurs, various types of insults, and calls for exclusion. Now, how do we enforce on this content? As we've heard, like, content moderation at scale is a significant challenge. So we use a combination of automated systems and human review. Proactive enforcement means identification and automated removal of violating content. And so moving forward, our proactive enforcement systems will focus on the highest severity violations and illegal content, and content that has the potential to cause offline harm. So we've given some examples like child sexual exploitation, drugs, suicide, and self-injury, for example. At the same time, we recognize the higher risk of potential harms in what we call countries at risk. So typically countries experiencing conflict or crises or elections. And so we'll continue to mobilize resources and expertise to track the impact of policy revisions. And that's where our engagements with the stakeholders from civil society, but also the UN, will remain vital and crucial for us to be able to better identify content that may lead to potential risk of offline harm. Now, turning to what we've learned since we made the changes to our community standard in January. We recently published what we call our content enforcement, our community standards enforcement report. And so in there, we explain a little bit more about how we use AI for content moderation. And so what we found is that, with my apologies because there's an echo, which is somewhat distracting. What we found is, as we began testing LLMs, large language models, by training them on our community standards, is that LLMs often perform better than existing machine learning models, or can enhance the existing ones. And so upon further testing, we're beginning to see how they can operate even beyond that of human performance for select policy areas. And so we believe that large language models and other AI tools can provide significant opportunities to counter high severity and illegal content at scale. And we will continue to test the benefits of using large language models for our enforcement systems, and in particular to improve accuracy. Other findings in our community standards enforcement report reveal that since we made changes to our policies and sought to reduce mistakes in the US, is that we've been able to make progress in that particular area, and that since the end of 2024 and early 2025, even with these changes, the prevalence overall has remained largely consistent across most violation types across our community standards. There's only been small increases in the prevalence of what we call our bullying and harassment policy and in violent and graphic content. So just to give you an order, on bullying and harassment, it was from 0.06 to 0.07%. Now, moving on the conversation slightly to how we take into account human rights as part of the development and deployment of our AI products. And here I'm thinking about, for example, what you might have read about Llama or Meta AI. One of the things I wanted to highlight is how we've begun emphasizing a systems-based approach to our AI safeguards. And so rather than baking all the protections into the core model as a one-size-fits-all solution, we've emphasized this systems-based approach that gives developers additional flexibility to apply the appropriate layers of protections for different use cases and audiences. So to give you an example, we continue to embed protections against the generation of child exploitation content in our foundation models. And at the same time, we provide protections for certain types of potentially offensive but lawful speech as optional system level mitigations. And so we explain all of this and have open sourced a number of tools such as LlamaGuard, PromptGuard, and CodeShield that can be customized and used together or independently by developers to implement protections. And all of this is in addition to providing a suite of tools for developers to integrate safeguards while deploying open source models. There's also extensive red teaming of our models that takes place, as well as first-party products prior to release to identify and mitigate potential risks, including those related to potential adverse human rights impacts. I'm conscious I'm almost at time, but since it's been briefly mentioned in the previous presentation, there's also work that is ongoing in relation to what we call false refusals, when a model refuses incorrectly to produce a requested output in response to a benign prompt, often precisely because the model had the good intention, had like the safety protections in place. This is a challenge and ongoing work, but this is something that we're not doing alone, and we continue our work in this area by, again, emphasizing stakeholder engagement. In the field of AI, there's been many examples, but I'll close by saying that Meta generally remains actively engaged with the UN on these topics. We've contributed to the Global Digital Compact, and we continue to be active in, for example, the UN BTEC project. And with this, I'll just close my remarks, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Guillaumin, for your remarks. And for the upcoming last two panelists, I will request that you keep your comments, please, concise and to the point. And our fifth panelist is Ms. Teresa Raja, who is the Director of Online Violence Prevention at Moonshoot.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to join such a critical conversation. So my name is Teresa Raja, and I'm from Moonshot, a global online safety and online violence prevention organization. Our mission is to end online harms through evidence, ethics, and human rights. Next slide, please. So I want to start with a stark reality, which is that we are living in an era of unprecedented hate speech online. Artificial intelligence has fundamentally transformed how hate spreads, making it faster, more personalized, and more pervasive than ever before. This is something we've heard throughout today's remarks. But here's what gives me hope. The same technologies that amplify hate can also be harnessed to prevent it. Next slide, please. AI has supercharged hate speech in three critical ways. First, through scale and speed. AI-generated content can now produce thousands of hateful posts, memes, and videos in minutes, with extremist communities discussing this since 2021, and now this use is flooding social media with AI-generated propaganda. Second, there's personalization. Algorithms don't just spread hate randomly, they identify who is most susceptible, and they deliver targeted content designed to radicalize. And so we're seeing AI create intimate parasocial relationships, chatbots reading terrorist manifestos in attackers' voices, and even Hitler AI, which is providing seemingly personal guidance. Third, there's sophistication. AI-generated deepfakes, non-consensual intimate imagery, and synthetic media make hate speech more believable and harder to detect. And this is not just theoretical. People have already been radicalized through interactions with AI chatbots. So we've been tracking this globally, and after major crises from COVID-19 to recent conflicts, we see hate speech spike dramatically. AI amplifies these surges, and it turns local tensions into the global hate campaigns within hours. Next slide, please. First and foremost, it's important to understand what actually leads people into hate, and furthermore, what leads people to violence as the solution. So our research shows that people engage with hateful ideologies because of three interconnected factors. Firstly, need. Hate can be an indicator of emotional suffering. So people seek belonging, purpose, and identity. Then there's narrative, that simplistic black-white thinking, telling us who to blame and what to do with that. So then there's network, human connections that introduce, propel, and embed people in these worldviews. AI supercharges all three, so it identifies psychological vulnerabilities and it delivers tailored narratives and connects like-minded individuals faster than ever before. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for prevention? What we need is a public health approach which covers 3 levels. Primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention represent that continuum of efforts aimed at reducing violence. So I'll start from the bottom. Primary prevention focuses on the community and building protective factors in the general population. So that can include civic education, community engagement, and media literacy. Then there's secondary prevention. This is that really crucial missing piece. It reaches individuals showing concerning behaviours before they've actually mobilised to violence. So these programs can be outside the criminal justice system, and it's about multidisciplinary programs and teams. But I'll come back to that. Tertiary prevention is working within the criminal justice systems after the violence has occurred. So we do need prevention across all 3 of these areas, but I'd like to focus today on the secondary prevention. This is the one that's often missing from our approaches because although we often prioritise educational initiatives, early prevention, we might actually prematurely leap ahead to tertiary when someone's actually committed an act of violence. And we miss that crucial step, which is getting to people, the humans behind the data points. Next slide, please. Our methodology addresses this gap. How do we reach people consuming hate content online? We run advertisements. We use the same advertising technologies that spread hate to reach people consuming it, and we offer them confidential support from trained counsellors. So this approach works because based on our own findings, people consuming hate content are 48% more likely to engage with others with other offers of help than the general public. Those looking to join hate groups are 115% more likely to seek assistance. Globally, we've connected dozens of individuals from hate speech in some cases immediate specialist support. So, for example, one particular actually said, I was looking for my favourite blog and your advert came up. That blog was a neo-Nazi website, and so that individual is now in ongoing counselling. Next slide, please. So why are partnerships essential? Because hate speech is a problem requiring coordinated response across 3 critical partnerships in our group. There's tech civil society. Platforms have
Ms. Raja, if you
algorithmic
could wrap up, please.
has human intervention expertise. The government-private sector, so there's the Global Digital Compact, which creates unprecedented space for coordinated action, but implementation requires sustained commitment and funding. And then there's the cross-sector knowledge sharing. What works for anti-Semitism may apply for anti-Muslim hate. What works in Germany may inform approaches in Kenya. Next slide, please. So we recommend 3 urgent actions leveraging AI for prevention. First, invest in human-centered AI solutions that reach individuals, not just detect content. Secondly, building the secondary prevention infrastructure that I spoke about that links up with behavioural health approaches. And third, establishing ethical frameworks for AI-powered intervention because vulnerable users must come first in AI design. Next slide, please. And with this, I'll close. To sum up, AI has made hate speech more complex, but it's also given us powerful new tools for prevention. So at Moonshot, we've proven that reaching people consuming hate does work. In the AI age, we can do this at an unprecedented scale, but only through the partnerships we're building here today. So the question isn't whether we can counter hate speech in the AI age, it's whether we'll work together to get there first, because no one is too far gone in our opinion, so we just need to reach them before the algorithms do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Raja. Now we have our last panelist, Ms. Eliska Perkova, who is a Senior Policy Analyst and Global Freedom of Expression Lead at Access Now. Please keep your comments short. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting us to this essential and timely event. Access Now is a global human rights organization that defends and extends digital rights of users at risk around the world. And today I came to speak about issues that my colleagues have already addressed in their interventions, and so I will try to keep it very concise. So I will start perhaps with portraying a little bit of a grim picture that currently many human rights activists, defenders, and civil societies find themselves in. There are a number of recommendations around how to actually limit negative effects of artificial intelligence and automated content moderation tools, some of them even codified in the legally binding frameworks. However, we also see penetration of the misleading narratives, claiming that these platform accountability frameworks seek to spread censorship. And this way, we also witness how big tech is trying to push against the newly established rules, such as legally mandated transparency or due diligence obligations that my colleagues elaborated on before. And I think we need to be aware of that, especially against the backdrop of declining democratic orders around the world, and also pushback by big tech against any effort to hold them accountable. So, to cite Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Opinion and Expression, Irene Khan, freedom of expression is in a global crisis. And at the same time, freedom of expression does not protect incitement to hatred, violence, or public and direct incitement to genocide. And I think this is something we need to keep in mind. Then, just briefly reflecting on recent developments around the spread of online hate speech, and I won't be going into the details and definitional difficulties because David has already elaborated on those. We need to also remind ourselves of recent content moderation changes, for instance, in Meta policy. And we also see ongoing investigations against other big platforms such as X when it comes to their algorithms that are accused of boosting far-right voices. We also see how at the receiving end of these abuse and violations that were well documented for many years, these have dangerous real-world consequences of corporate policy changes, and they threaten the rights and safeties of those most vulnerable among us. And one additional group that I would like to mention today is definitely rising violence against refugees and asylum seekers, who are one of the most vulnerable ones, and ongoing online hate speech campaigns targeting this group that truly doesn't have any protective safeguards on their side. So with this grim picture, I will move on to elaborate on a number of risk factors that we see around the use and deployment of artificial intelligence when it comes to hate speech. Some of them will be a bit repetitive, but I will try to pick those arguments that maybe haven't resonated in the room that much yet. So first of all, the usual suspect and the common cited suspect is automated content moderation. For instance, we see the increased reliance on automated content moderation by platforms. And here I would like to cite the recent transparency reports that were published in the European Union, where we see that online platforms and search engines are becoming very much reliant on automated content moderation. And these reports reveal that a majority of content moderation actions involve at least partial automation, primarily for initial detection of content that either violates their terms and conditions or allegedly is illegal. And increasingly also, there are numbers that show complete automated removal of such content. That means without any human intervention. We also see flawed and discriminatory enforcement of content moderation policies by platforms, inconsistent and discriminatory rule enforcement, and also arbitrary and often erroneous rule enforcement. And these translates in arbitrary content removals, suspensions of prominent accounts of those who lead the movements, restrictions on user contents and accounts, and also something we refer to as shadow banning. That means restrictions of content with any safeguards of procedural justice, understanding, awareness, or explanation why that content was removed. And I would give a very prominent example from recent year, and that has been also mentioned by a previous speaker, and those are pro-Palestinian voices that are being heavily impacted by, for instance, dangerous organization and individual policies that often prohibit glorification, support, and representation of designated group and individuals to prevent and disrupt real-world harm. However, they are disproportionately impacting pro-Palestinian voices of Arabic content. Also, there is a persistent evidence, and many of it was directly mapped by Access Now and is accessible on our website, that Palestinian-related content is either over-moderated due to policies that incorporate certain legal obligations relating to designated foreign terrorist organizations, or they are being proactively detected through automated means that can also lead to already mentioned prior constraints on such content. And platforms' content moderation tools, particularly their automated decision-making, are poorly trained, often not fit for purpose, and especially ill-suited for use in non-English languages. I would like to briefly touch upon other two prominent risks, and that's monetization of hate speech that my colleagues also already mentioned, where platforms do not always offer the same safety system in all languages in which the platform is used or in all countries where it is available. This prominent lack of resources is persistent for years. And of course, many of these algorithms are being fine-tuned for profit over public interest, from the dissemination of harmful content triggering views, engagement, and ultimately monetization. This monetization does not concern only, for instance, contractual relationship between social media and influencers, but it also
Ms. Parkova, if you could please conclude.
Absolutely. I was told that I have 7 minutes, but I quickly took the conclusion then. I would actually, in the context of monetization, still provide a concrete example that was monitored by Palestinian digital rights organization Hilale that revealed that Meta has approved paid advertisement by a right-wing Israeli group calling for the assassination of pro-Palestinian activists in the US, as well as ads calling for a Holocaust for the Palestinians or for Gazan women and children and elderly to be wiped out. There are a number of other examples that we monitored and we consequently continue documenting. And finally, my final part was supposed to touch upon generative AI. I won't go into further details there. However, there is a certain potential indeed to actually make the content moderation more effective and serving for the purpose of communities at risk. Some open foundational models of generative AI can be even fine-tuned and trained, but we first have to address how we're going to establish adequate content moderation policies around inputs and outputs that these systems generate. I would be very careful with recommending things like watermarking, which is not a silver bullet solution, and watermarking itself can impose serious difficulties for freedom of expression and privacy. And I will conclude with a quote by Deborah Raji and Abeda Burhain in context of the use and deployment of AI. If the powerful companies cannot release systems that meet the expectations of those most likely to be harmed by them, then their products are not ready to serve these communities and do not deserve widespread release. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parkova. And with that insightful intervention, that concludes our panelists. Sincere thanks to all our panelists that have joined us in person and online for enriching this discussion, for their contribution and insight. Thank you so much. And now we will move to the segment on intervention by member state that will be chaired by Ambassador Hilale.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now we go to the last segment of our celebration of this highly important day, International Day on Hate Speech. And I have the pleasure to give the floor to the first speaker, who is the Ambassador Permanent Representative of Mauritania, who will be followed by the Permanent Representative of Bahrain and Pakistan and Sierra Leone. Please.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank the Kingdom of Morocco, the Office on Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility to Protect for organizing this event, which we are celebrating for the fourth time, the International Day Against Hate Speech on June 18 of each year, following the adoption of the General Assembly Resolution 75/13 309 of July 21. This celebrating present an opportunity to raise the tools that can mitigate hate speech. In this context, it is important to note that information technology, including emerging artificial intelligence tools, can be misused to entrench hate speech. We therefore call to a strong cooperation to coordinate and manage the communication technology space through laws and regulation. The content and the product of this space must be subjective to oversight and controlled by member states, the international community, society, and academia. Hate speech has spread without limit in the digital space, with numerous studies confirming that virtual reality, particularly social media, has provided a fertile environment for this discourse to flourish in the absence of oversight and governance. Considering this reality, we must enhance our capacity to control information technology, including artificial intelligence, and it is in accordance with the UN National Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech. The Global Digital Compact on Information Technology is a manifestation of the international community's awareness to control information technology. With awareness must be supported by concrete cooperation based on our common interest. Mauritania is convinced that the spread of hate speech negative impact the international community effort to promote peace, security, human rights, and sustainable development. Call on all state, international bodies, and actors to firmly and decisively confront all forms of hatred, whether directed against religion, ethnicity, or community, or motivated by racism. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to the Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Bahrain. You have the floor, sir.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Omar Hilale, I would like to first, thank the Permanent Mission of the Kingdom of Morocco and the United Nations Office for Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide for organizing this important and timely event, focusing on the intersection between AI and hate speech, with emphasis on partnership. We also extend our appreciation to the distinguished speakers and panelists for their valuable insight. In the Global Digital Compact adopted last September, member states agreed to strengthen international cooperation to address the challenges of misinformation and disinformation and hate speech online. Under the leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, King of the Kingdom of Bahrain, and with the support of His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, Bahrain remains committed to fostering peace and promoting tolerance and coexistence. These values are reflected in the declaration of the Kingdom of Bahrain on the freedom of religion and belief, and advanced through the King Hamad Global Center for Coexistence and Tolerance. Efforts that led to a General Assembly adoption of the International Day of Peaceful Coexistence earlier this year. His Majesty the King had also launched a call for the adoption of an international agreement to criminalize religious and racial hate speech, recognizing both the transformative potential for emerging technologies and the risk. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister called for an international treaty governing the development on AI. We also believe that education, as well as interreligious and intercultural dialogue, especially among youth, are vital to building resilience against hateful ideologies. As an incoming member for the Security Council for the term 2026-2027, we'll continue to support dialogue and collective action in addressing traditional and emerging threats and sustaining peace. To conclude, we believe that only through global collaboration and shared responsibility can we harness technology for good and ensure the digital future grounded on the dignity and peace for all. Thank you again, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Ambassador, for your statement. And now I give the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Pakistan. Sir.
So, join
Mike.
colleagues.
Mike.
Let me also join colleagues in thanking the Kingdom of Morocco and the Office on Genocide Prevention for organizing this important high-level event. This day is a reminder of our shared responsibility to counter intolerance, uphold dignity, and safeguard pluralism. Hate speech, disinformation, and violent extremism are unfortunately on the rise. And all of this is actually targeting people of different faiths, including Muslims, and also individuals based on race, gender, and nationality. And if left unchecked, such narratives risk fracturing societies and endanger peace and stability. The surge in Islamophobia through discriminatory laws, defamation of religious symbols, and orchestrated vilification are particularly alarming trends. Media platforms, especially those aligned with dominant political forces, have enabled this hate. Similar tactics now target other marginalized communities. We also observe rising racism and xenophobia fueling division and exclusion. These trends demand urgent collective response. We welcome the appointment of the UN Special Envoy on combating Islamophobia pursuant to Resolution 78264 that was led by Pakistan on behalf of the OIC. This institutional step is very timely, and we extend our full support to the mandate. So, Chair, digital platforms in particular have become vehicles for hate amplification. Algorithms reward sensationalism, targeting people on the basis of identity and background. This is further worsened by politicized media, where truth is often sacrificed for influence. We urge the full implementation of the UN strategy and plan of action on hate speech. Addressing hate in all its forms and manifestations is the key to global harmony. Pakistan remains firmly committed to promoting respect, inclusion, and peaceful coexistence. Diversity must be viewed as our collective strength. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, especially that you led the meeting of the Security Council to come here and to let us listening to your message. Thanks a lot. So now I give the floor to another member of the Security Council, also leaving his meeting and joining us. That's a strong signal of your commitments. Sierra Leone, that will be followed by the PR of Kenya. Ambassador.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Excellency. Indeed, this is certainly a very important issue. Chair, Excellencies, Special Advisor Gamba, distinguished colleagues. First, let me really thank the previous high-level speakers and panelists for their valuable contributions. Sierra Leone commends the Kingdom of Morocco, the UN Office on Genocide Prevention and the responsibility to protect, and organizing partners for the commitment to harnessing international support for safe AI environment that supports human development and international peace and security. We affirm today our collective commitment to countering hate speech in all its forms, in line with the principles enshrined in the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and regional instruments such as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. As we have heard already, but bears repeating, hate speech is not merely a moral failing. It is a driver of violence, exclusion, and in its most extreme forms, atrocity crimes. Given our experience decades ago with a civil conflict fueled by discrimination and division, Sierra Leone remains deeply committed to upholding tolerance, dialogue, and inclusion. We recognize the complex intersection between hate speech and artificial intelligence. We acknowledge the potential of AI tools to assist in early warning and prevention of violence. But we must remain vigilant against their misuse, whether through amplifying hate, entrenching discrimination, or enabling harmful surveillance practices. It is imperative that all AI-related technologies are governed with transparency, accountability, and in full respect of international human rights law. We therefore welcome the Global Digital Compact prioritization of AI governance and reiterate that a safe, inclusive, and trusted digital space is integral to sustaining peace and advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. In terms of implementation at the national level, in 2021, Sierra Leone passed the Cybersecurity and Crime Act, which criminalizes any content that advocates, promotes, or incites hatred, discrimination, or violence based on factors such as race, descent, national or ethnic origin, or religion. It supports technology that protects critical digital infrastructure and promotes public education, upholds protection obligations, rights, and the privacy of citizens. Sierra Leone therefore calls for stronger partnerships across government, civil society, the private sector, academia, and the technology community to build coalitions that protect and promote inclusive spaces, both online and offline. We must empower grassroots initiatives that are often the first line of defense in countering hate speech, particularly in fragile contexts. Finally, we urge the full and effective implementation of the United Nations strategy and plan of action on hate speech. Let us act decisively so that the digital revolution becomes a force for good and not a tool for harm. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, dear brother, Ambassador of Sierra Leone. Now I give the floor to the Ambassador of Kenya, which will be followed by Armenia and EU. Kenya is not here.
My microphone is on, but I'm the PR of Rwanda, not Kenya. So
No,
I don't know that we
sorry. Because they wrote me here.
Thank you.
So, my apologies.
Maybe I can give way to my colleague from Kenya first. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Distinguished delegates and permanent representatives. Allow me to begin by expressing Rwanda's deep appreciation to the organizers of this important commemoration. The Kingdom of Morocco, the United Nations Office on Genocide Prevention, and the responsibility to protect and their partners. We commend your leadership in marking the 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech with the timely focus on the intersection of hate speech and artificial intelligence. Excellency Chair, I'm particularly delighted to be here today and to meet and listen to Professor Stanton. I want to commend you, Professor, for your enormous contribution to the scholarly work on genocide studies, which has helped to shape post-genocide jurisdictions. And I say this based on my own experience as former Prosecutor General of Rwanda, who was involved in prosecuting genocide cases for 10 years, and also worked with the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. So I can confirm that your scholarly work is the leading academic work on this subject. And thank you also for referring to the media trial in Arusha, which resolved a very contentious issue of where do we draw the line between free speech and free expression that are protected and hate speech that is criminal. The judicial demarcation was drawn in that trial. The trial of Ferdinand Nahimana, Hassan Ngeze, and Jabo Skobarayagwiza. So at least the United Nations and their entities should not have a confusion about that. And in that case, inference was drawn from different constitutions in the national jurisdictions. The most liberal constitutions were referred to and analyzed. And that was consciously done such that the jurisprudence to be set was to be international. So the Tribunal for Rwanda has resolved that problem. Tech companies and whoever wants to understand where do we end with protected speech and deal with the criminal speech, the judicial guidance is there. So thank you very much, Prof, for referring to that case. This first ever resolution on hate speech marked a significant milestone in advancing global efforts to counter this growing threat, especially in the digital context. Today, while the platforms and the tools may have changed, the threat remains. Online hate, now accelerated by AI-generated content and algorithmic amplification, spreads faster than truth, radicalizes communities, and undermines the foundations of peace we have worked hard to build. Behind every slur and every viral image, there are real consequences for real people. Rwanda strongly supports a coordinated global approach to regulating AI and digital platforms rooted in international human rights law. As called for in the Global Digital Compact, we must urgently prioritize artificial intelligence governance and ethical safeguards, particularly in areas affecting vulnerable communities. Mr. Excellency Chair, allow me to draw attention to Rwanda's experience that underpins deep conviction on this issue. The 1994 genocide against the Tutsi taught us that the devastating consequences of unchecked hate speech, enabled by a systematic incitement to hatred, radio broadcasts, newspapers, and state rhetoric, dehumanized the Tutsi. Hate speech ultimately paved the way to one of the worst atrocities in the 20th century. Artificial intelligence and automated content tools are increasingly being used to translate, replicate, and amplify these messages, making them harder to trace and more difficult to counter. As Rwanda continues to confront the lingering presence of this dangerous ideology, we witness the persistence of hate and the urgency of building stronger safeguards in law, technology, and governance. Excellency Chair, in this regard, it is important that, among others, the following priorities that we believe are essential for an effective global response must be considered. First, we must invest in a data-driven monitoring mechanism that go beyond surface-level detection. Current moderation systems often overlook hate speech when expressed in non-dominant languages or cloaked in coded languages. Professor Stanton knows, and he made a reference about cockroaches or going to work. Going to work, which must be something ordinarily good, but in the context that is specific, it meant going to kill people. To be effective, monitoring must be multilingual, culturally aware, and capable of identifying emerging patterns before they escalate. In regions like ours, where the echoes of past atrocities remain painfully close, early warning systems must be informed by real-time disaggregated data that reflect the specific vulnerabilities of targeted communities. Secondly, any meaningful response must be context-specific. Too often, interventions are detached from the histories, power dynamics, and social fractures that make certain communities more susceptible to hate-fueled violence. And lastly, We must adopt an inclusive and multi-stakeholder approach to both policy and practice. Governments alone cannot solve this problem, nor can technology companies act as the sole drivers. We must include and empower all actors, including civil society and the private sector, to disrupt harmful narratives through access to resources, capacity building, decision-making platforms at both national and global levels. To conclude, Excellency Chair, Rwanda believes that hate speech is not only dangerous, it incites violence, it erodes social cohesion, and opens old wounds. It threatens to pull us backward. We must not allow the digital age to be a breeding ground for the ideologies we vowed never to tolerate again. Let us ensure that our digital spaces serve as engines of inclusion and not instruments of division. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador for Rwanda. I would like to thank you for being with us today. I think your presence and your very strong message about the atrocities that your people, Tutsi, have suffered because of genocide and have suffered because the international community kept silent, and it suffered because the United Nations didn't play its role in that. It's a life and example testimony of what people can pay or will have to pay because of genocide, because of hatred, but in the same time to show that a nation can rise again thanks to political leadership, but also to resilience and to tolerance and to reconciliations. It's a long process, but I would like to, by expressing our solidarity with your people, at the same time expressing our admiration for the courage of your people. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Ambassador of Philippines.
Year's observance of the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. We thank the Office of the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide and the Permanent Mission of the Kingdom of Morocco for this event. Words can be weapons, inciting violence, fueling discrimination, and undermining dignity. When amplified by algorithms or monetized, their harm can multiply. Artificial intelligence, or AI, plays a dual role in this landscape. On one hand, AI can be misused to spread disinformation, deepfakes, and manipulated content at scale, boosting the reach and impact of hate speech. This can be seen in how such technologies are being weaponized against vulnerable groups, including migrants, women, and ethnic minorities. On the other hand, AI can help counter hate speech through content detection and moderation. Yet in diverse multilingual societies like the Philippines, the inability of AI to grasp context, nuance, and cultural idiosyncrasies risks suppressing legitimate expression. Thus, the need for culturally aware, human-guided AI systems that uphold both safety and freedom of speech. The Philippines is working to strengthen its legal and policy framework to address these emerging challenges through initiatives like the proposed Deepfake Accountability and Transparency Acts, which mandates disclosure for AI-generated content, as well as expanding digital literacy and rights education under our 2023 to 2028 Plan of Action for the Promotion and Protection of Human Rights. We are also working on strengthening legislation to address incitement, defamation, and cyber abuse, with proposals to amend our Safe Spaces Act and to institutionalize internet safety education. Finally, we are proactively shaping our national AI agenda through a recent release of an AI roadmap that will be supported by more than $46 million in AI projects spanning industries, healthcare, education, mobility, environment, disaster risk reduction, and emerging technology platforms. Excellencies, our approach is rooted in multi-stakeholder partnership because no single actor can reclaim digital space alone. We also draw inspiration from the Durban Declaration and Program of Action, which reminds us of the urgent imperative to combat racism, xenophobia, and related intolerance in all forms. The Philippines calls on ensuring that AI serves to protect, not divide, to elevate truth and not amplify hate. We stand ready to work in building ethical, inclusive, and resilient digital environments for all. Thank you.
I thank the Ambassador Permanent Representative of Philippines for his statements, and now give floor to the Permanent Representative of United Arab Emirates, which will be followed by the Permanent Representative of Armenia and the DPR of EU. Please, you have the floor, sir.
Excellencies, colleagues, I thank the Kingdom of Morocco for convening this high-level event and express appreciation to Undersecretary General Moratinos and SRSG Gamba and all the panelists for their invaluable insights. We recognize the important work of the Office on Genocide Prevention in advancing this vital agenda both within the United Nations and beyond. Today's discussion comes at a critical time. Hate speech, extremism, misinformation, and disinformation continue to proliferate globally, particularly online, posing serious threats to peace and social cohesion. While the rise of artificial intelligence brings opportunities to promote early warning and prevention, if left unchecked, it could be exploited to amplify division, polarize societies, and fuel conflict. These issues were at the heart of the ARIA Formula meeting co-hosted by the United Arab Emirates and Albania in December 2023. The meeting underscored the urgent need for inclusive AI governance, robust safeguards, and the protection of information integrity in the digital age. In this context, the UAE believes that AI tools can play a critical role in preventing and countering hate speech and other online harms. Security Council Resolution 2686 on tolerance, peace, and security, the first to recognize that hate speech and extremism can contribute to conflict, requests UN peacekeeping and special political missions within their respective mandates to monitor and report on such acts that negatively affect peace and security. Implementing Resolution 2686 is therefore critical for strengthening conflict prevention and resolution, as well as for peacekeeping and peace building in the AI and digital age. Yet, achieving these goals requires more than just institutional action alone. No government or organization can tackle hate speech on their own. It demands a whole-of-society response that mobilizes various stakeholders, such as youth, women, faith leaders, civil society, and the private sector. Engaging a broad range of actors is essential to developing strategies that promote tolerance and bridge divides. By deepening partnerships and mobilizing collective action to prevent and counter hate speech, extremism, and all forms of intolerance, we can build more resilient, prosperous, and peaceful societies for all. Thank you.
I thank the Ambassador Permanent Representative of United Arab Emirates for his statement, and now give floor to the Ambassador Permanent Representative of Armenia.
Esteemed Chair, Excellencies, Special Advisor, colleagues, sincere appreciation for convening this high-level meeting in commemoration of the International Day to Counter Hate Speech. Amid rising xenophobia, racism, and religious intolerance, hate speech in all its forms, particularly when directed at ethnic and religious groups and encouraged by state leaders, often fuels violence and conflicts, undermining the core values and principles upon which the UN is founded. Several days ago, Special Advisor Gamba rightly noted that hate speech can lead to deadly roads. Indeed, extreme forms of hate speech are clear precursors of atrocity crimes. Today, reliable digital evidence may also positively contribute to accountability for violations and abuses. ICT tools can be widely used for distance monitoring in number of humanitarian settings, conflict and post-conflict situations, but also in enhancing early warning mechanisms and conflict prevention. Yet, AI is increasingly being weaponized to disseminate disinformation, reinforce harmful stereotypes, and incite hatred. Tackling hate speech in AI-generated content requires strong international cooperation in full compliance with international law as reconfirmed by the member states in the Global Digital Compact. Armenia remains firmly committed to advancing the prevention agenda, including addressing hate speech, both online and offline, recognizing the risks it poses to escalating violence, undermining regional stability, and deepening mistrust. In this regard, we acknowledge the essential role of the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide in advancing the UN's efforts to combat hate speech in line with the UN strategy and plan of action on hate speech. Armenia continues to invest considerable efforts not only for consolidation of its legislative and policy frameworks for fighting hate speech and hate crimes, but also for developing professional capacities among law enforcement system and raising awareness among general public and policymakers. And empowering young people to confront mentioned challenges is of utmost importance. Dear colleagues, effectively addressing hate speech in the age of artificial intelligence requires a holistic, inclusive, and human rights-based approach. It includes responsible governance of digital technologies, investment in education and digital literacy, and active youth engagement through civic participation, advocacy, and innovative solutions. In conclusion, Armenia stands ready to contribute to the global effort in the fight against hate speech, including in digital spaces, and to foster the responsible use of emerging technologies in support of the broader prevention agenda aimed at promoting peace and protecting human dignity worldwide. I thank you.
I thank Permanent Representative of Armenia. We still have 6 speakers for 10 minutes, so I beg you, please, if you can reduce your intervention to 2 minutes. So, EU, please, try to give the example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That will be hard because I speak on behalf of 27 countries, so I'll try in 3. But thank you for bringing us together, and thank you also for the panelists for their contributions. As I said, I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. And on this very important occasion, we do reaffirm our support to the UN strategy and plan of action on hate speech. The focus on the link of hate speech with artificial intelligence is very timely in light of the extraordinary speed of technological developments that we continue to witness. And as UN member states, we do find ourselves trying to keep up with these technological advances in the hope to harness their immense powers to contribute to global participation and equity, progress towards the SDGs, and respect for human rights for all. Unfortunately, despite all the opportunities that they offer, it cannot be denied that the internet and new technologies also have been considerable accelerators for the dissemination of hatred and intolerance. Online companies and platforms must therefore take responsibility for any illegal content that they may host. And what is illegal offline must be illegal online. Allow me to outline 2 key EU measures in this regard. Firstly, in June 2024, the EU adopted the world's first ever rules on AI. The Artificial Intelligence Act regulates AI to encourage innovation while protecting users and their human rights. To this end, it establishes a risk-based classification of AI systems with compliance requirements that increase or decrease depending on the system's risk level. Secondly, in November 2022, the EU Digital Services Act went into force. It tackles all forms of illegal content, including hate speech, online, while protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms. The Digital Service Act introduces transparency obligations for online platforms regarding their content moderation activities, terms and conditions, algorithms, and advertising, with particularly increased transparency and accountability measures for very large online platforms. In January 2025, a code of conduct on countering illegal hate speech online was integrated into the regulatory framework of the Digital Service Act. It specifically strengthens the way online platforms deal with content that constitutes illegal hate speech according to EU and EU member states' laws. And perhaps not unsurprisingly, we can see a strong backlash against these measures. Businesses, by definition, do not enjoy having to fulfill additional responsibilities. Some UN member states are eager to support this stance, criticizing the EU for alleged censorship and restrictions of the freedom of speech. Sorry, some UN member states. Let me be very clear in response to such criticism. The right to freedom of opinion and expression is an inalienable right of each person and a cornerstone of European liberal democratic societies. This freedom extends to information and ideas that may offend, shock, or disturb others, including criticism of religion, ideology, beliefs, and institutions. However, the right to freedom of opinion and expression is not absolute. States are obliged to prohibit by law incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence. And our national courts, the European Court of Justice and the European Court of Human Rights, ensure that these rights are fully protected in accordance with international human rights law. In the Global Digital Compact, UN member states agreed to uphold international human rights law throughout the life cycle of digital and emerging technologies, so that users can safely benefit from digital technologies. And it is our collective responsibility to put in place the right safeguards at global level as a common reference framework on which national content moderation policies can be built. We are convinced that freedom of expression and the fight against hate speech are complementary, not contradictory, and we remain fully committed to cooperating with the UN and our international partners to address this global challenge. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank you for now I give floor to the DPR of Greece, followed by DPR of Malaysia, Fiji, and Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me to start by commending the organizers for convening this very important event, the permanent mission of the Kingdom of Morocco and the UN Office of Genocide Prevention and the Responsibility of Protect, which highlights the complex relationship between hate speech and artificial intelligence. Greece aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union, and I would like to make a very few brief remarks. AI can serve as a powerful tool to detect and reduce hate speech before it causes broader harm. It helps recognize dangerous patterns and intervene early in the digital space. However, as we have heard, we must be mindful of the risks. Automated moderation without adequate oversight may lead to overblocking and harm freedom of expression. Human control and accountability must be preserved throughout the AI life cycle. Greece believes that establishing human rights impact assessments, ensuring public transparency, and involving civil society in artificial intelligence oversight are key to safeguarding rights. Remedies must also be available to individuals affected by AI-related decisions. Nationally, Greece has developed an integrated approach to AI governance and hate speech regulation. Through strong partnerships across government, academia, and civil society, we are building ethical AI tools, including models tailored to the Greek language and exploring the link between online hate and offline violence. Greece's experience underscores the imperative for an inclusive, adaptive approach. We advocate for international cooperation, for investment in ethical AI, for empowering citizens by expanding digital literacy and critical thinking initiatives, and adaptable policy frameworks. In conclusion, Greece stands ready to continue contributing to the global effort to counter hate speech in the age of artificial intelligence. I thank you.
Thank you very much to our friend from Greece. I'm very sorry. I will give floor to the DPR of Russia, who was before and after Malaysia. Madam, you have the floor.
very much for giving me the floor, and let me start by expressing deep appreciation to all organizers for convening today's event to mark the International Day for Countering Hate Speech. The Russian Federation consistently advocates and promotes fight against discrimination in all its forms and manifestations. Hate speech is one of the manifestations of discrimination that are prohibited in particular by International Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination and International Pact on Civil and Political Rights. Russia promotes an annual UN General Assembly resolution on contemporary forms and practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism, xenophobia, related intolerance, with specific emphasis on Nazism and neo-Nazism. Unfortunately, practices and policies of discrimination, in particularly based on ethnic, religious, and linguistic grounds, are not going away, but on the contrary, they are multiplied. Hate speech at times get protected by references to the freedom of opinion and expression, which cannot be the case, as previous speakers also said. So the situation must receive special attention of the international community. The use of new technologies brings not only undeniable benefits, but also poses new challenges. Nowadays, the spread of hate speech, including racist slogans and extremist ideas, found avenue on social network. Social networks have become fertile ground for hatred and incitement, manipulation of public opinion, and disinformation. With particular concern, we know that young people often become target and victims of such influence. Artificial intelligence can also be used as a tool for propagating hate speech, in particular through theft, substitution, and or distortion of training data. Such information may contain elements of racial discrimination, xenophobia, and religious intolerance. As a result, artificial intelligence systems generate unacceptable and false results by using this information for training. We are convinced that artificial intelligence technologies must be trusted and protected from unauthorized access and other forms of harm to national security, and in this regard, it is important to develop universal technical standards and requirements. Such work is already underway in the International Telecommunication Union. In addition, it is necessary to create a fair system for regulating machine learning technologies. We believe that the United Nations must play a central role in this effort. A significant contribution to solving the problem of incitement to hatred, including through the use of artificial intelligence technology, could make initiatives such as the project on preventing and countering extremism and national and regional practices, implemented by the UN Office of Counterterrorism. This initiative is aimed at strengthening cooperation between states, as well as exchange of experiences and effective practices in this area. Factors of radicalization and conditions conducive to extremism will be considered, as well as search for effective approaches and measures to prevent extremism threats. The project is being implemented in accordance with the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy and relevant UN Security Council resolutions. And the main result is expected to be a practical guide to preventing and countering extremism. We don't have much time. I will probably stop here and just end by saying that it is obvious that in order to combat hate speech, we need to maintain relations based on mutual respect. It is necessary to unite efforts to combat the spread of ideas of intolerance, racial, national, religious superiority, behind which are hidden claims to world domination, serving as a basis for new threats. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I give floor to the TPR of Malaysia. You have floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the briefers. I'll give an abridged version of my statement. Hate speech undermines peace, fuels division, and threatens the very fabric of our societies. The rapid deployment of AI offers transformative potential, but also risks amplifying harmful narratives and misinformation. We are now faced with a double-edged sword. AI can either entrench discrimination or be harnessed to promote understanding and inclusion. The solution lies in balance and cooperation. Nationally, Malaysia's efforts to counter hate speech are guided by mutual respect, responsible expression, and community harmony. Through the National Unity Policy and Rukun Negara, we aim to cultivate tolerance and inclusivity across our multi-ethnic and multi-faith society. We are strengthening our digital governance framework by reviewing laws to prevent the misuse of emerging technologies, including AI, to spread hate. We are also engaging with stakeholders to enhance digital literacy and build resilience against online incitement. We support international cooperation to establish ethical frameworks and safeguards for AI development and deployment. We are committed to working together to create an AI-enabled future that reflects our shared values, including equality and respect for every individual. By upholding these principles, we can unlock AI's full potential for the benefit of all peoples globally. Malaysia calls for a stronger global coalition involving governments, industry, academia, and civil society. We must work together to reclaim safe and inclusive digital spaces. Technology must not be misused to create division, but serves as a tool to amplify messages of peace, tolerance, and humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Malaysia. Now we give floor to the Ambassador of Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to begin by thanking you and the mission of the Kingdom of Morocco for convening this high-level meeting to mark the 4th International Day for Countering Hate Speech, with special emphasis on hate speech and artificial intelligence nexus, building a coalition to reclaim inclusive and safe for spaces free of hatred. Mr. Chair, we live in an era defined by digital transformation where artificial intelligence shapes the way we communicate, learn, and engage with one another. Furthermore, AI offers unparalleled opportunities to uplift economies, improve healthcare, and enhance education. It enables innovation in climate solutions, strengthens governance, and empowers marginalized communities through accessibility and automation. With responsible use, AI can bridge gaps, drive inclusion, and create a more equitable future for all. Mr. Chair, but alongside its potential for progress, AI can be both a weapon and a shield. When AI is misused, it can spread misinformation, amplify harmful and extremist narratives, manipulate public discourse, and fuel decisiveness online. It has also become intertwined with hate speech as one of society's most dangerous challenges. The challenge we face is clear. How do we ensure AI serves humanity rather than harms it? No single entity can combat the challenges of AI alone, and therefore the urgent need for building a coalition is crucial. Governments, tech companies, civil society, and individuals must come together in a global effort to reclaim digital spaces for inclusivity. In Timor-Leste, a small island nation, we have started to work on strengthening the AI ethics and accountability to ensure AI serves as a tool for inclusivity rather than harm. We also educate communities and establish digital literacy to raise public awareness, initiatives, and equip users with the skills to identify and report all generated hate speech. We have initiated schools to incorporate critical media literacy into their curricula, empowering young people to question the counter-harmful narratives, and also enhance collaboration between academic institutions and policymakers to keep AI ethics at the forefront of technological advances. We also undergo policy reform and global collaboration. That we revise the regulations to ensure AI platforms remain accountable while protecting digital freedoms. But we also believe, in line with what you have just suggested in this meeting, that international alliances should establish unified frameworks to consistently address online hate speech. Collaboration between social movements and tech industries is vital to ensuring AI serves diverse communities equitably. As AI capabilities advance, so do we associated risks ranging from ethical dilemmas to bias, privacy concerns, and unchecked autonomous decision-making. To guarantee AI development aligns with principles of human rights, fairness, and accountability, policy reform and global cooperation are essential, and therefore it must be designed to uphold fairness and prevent the reinforcement of societal basis. Safeguards must also be put in place to prevent AI from being exploited for misinformation, surveillance, or unethical purposes. We stand at the crossroads, Mr. Chair. Will AI be a tool for division or a force for unity? Let us build a future where technologies uplifts rather than divides. Thank you.
I thank the Ambassador Permanent Representative of Timor-Leste for his speech, and now I give floor to the DPR of Peru.
Thank you, Chair. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the member states of the UN LGBTI Core Group, an informal cross-regional group established in 2008. I am summarizing this statement. We will send the full version to the organizers with the kind request that they publish it online. As our overarching goal is to work within the UN framework to ensure universal respect for the human rights and fundamental freedoms for all, specifically lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex persons with a particular focus on protection from violence and discrimination, the LGBTI core group wants to break the silence surrounding the suffering faced by the LGBTI persons and to draw attention to the harsh reality they often face because of their real or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, or sex characteristic. LGBTI persons are frequently victims of hate speech. Hate speech causes tremendous harm to LGBTI persons, affecting their civil and political rights as well as economic, social, and cultural rights. Likewise, fear and intimidation resulting from it may prevent them from fully participating in their societies. Hate speech can also cause LGBTI persons to be often more exposed to additional stigma, multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination and violence, and ultimately can lead to hate crimes against them. In the digital context, hate speech can take the form of images and videos, several of which created using AI, as well as hashtags that are widely spread online to attack and harass LGBTI persons. Cyberbullying is particularly dangerous for LGBTI youth, with social media at times amplifying hate and dragging them into isolation, depression, and suicidal thoughts. Governments must work to create a safe and secure online space for all users by defining and adopting common standards, guidelines, and industry actions that are in compliance with international law, while digital technology companies must increase their accountability and transparency. In this sense, the LGBTI core group calls upon all actors to work in partnership to scale up their policies and actions to address and counter hate speech both online and offline, while making sure that they also consider the unique needs and perspectives of LGBTI persons. The group firmly believes that by doing so, we will truly achieve our goal to ensure universal respect for the human rights and fundamental freedoms for all, without distinction of any kind. Thank you very much.
I thank the DPR of Peru, and I give now the floor to the DPR of Guatemala, which will be followed by Austria and Fiji.
Thank you, Ambassador. Guatemala appreciates and values this opportunity to promote dialogue on the importance of countering all forms of hatred, intolerance, and discrimination, as well as the tools used to perpetuate them. In this regard, it is essential that states promote preventative measures to counter hate speech in all its forms, taking into account that these measures should not restrict or limit freedom of expression, as well as freedom of thought, conscience, or religion, but rather recognize that these rights must be exercised with unrestricted respect for the human rights of all people without distinction. In a constantly evolving world, we must fight against disinformation, which is a constant threat to people's dignity and integrity. The misuse of social media and technologies such as artificial intelligence can generate practices that incite hatred and encourage acts of violence. The widespread use of the internet has fostered new forms of instant interaction that influence everyone's opinions and perceptions. The dissemination of misinformation harms, confuses, and influences people's opinions. This increases our need to disseminate truthful, accurate, accessible, and multilingual information both online and offline. In this sense, it is necessary to know how to identify issues that lead to an increase or exacerbation of actions that promote racism in all media. Guatemala, being a multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multilingual country, promotes intercultural dialogue and respects freedom of religion and belief, recognizing the importance of promoting a culture of peace and nonviolence through the dissemination of information that conveys tolerance, respect, solidarity, equality, and truth. It should be noted that my country recognizes, respects, and promotes the Mayan, Garifunan, and Xinca languages in accordance with Article 66 of the Political Constitution of the Republic of Guatemala, as well as the National Languages Law, through which the state recognizes these languages as essential elements of the national identity and as a fundamental and substantive condition of its structure and functioning. I acknowledge the meeting today, its timeliness, and the efforts speared by the distinguished delegation of Morocco and the Office of the Special Advisor. We need more discussions such as this one. Thank you.
I thank the DPR of Guatemala for her speech, and now give floor to DPR of Austria. Finally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Austria aligns itself with the statement made on behalf of the EU, and I also would like to thank the Kingdom of Morocco for this valuable and timely initiative. The spotlight on the relationship between hate speech and AI is both urgent and highly relevant, given the unprecedented speed of technological change. Our primary goal must be to ensure that emerging technologies are used to uphold human rights and advance their SDGs. We are witnessing an alarming rise in online hate speech, often algorithmically amplified. This digital reality reflects and exacerbates broader societal trends: rising xenophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim hatred, Christian persecution, and other forms of racism and religious intolerance. Hate crimes are often linked to online radicalization, demonstrating how virtual hate speech can lead to real-world violence. Austria remains deeply concerned about ongoing acts of intolerance and violence based on religion or belief, targeting individuals and entire religious communities and minorities. We firmly reject all forms of discrimination. At the same time, freedom of opinion and expression must remain an inalienable right and the cornerstone of liberal democracies. Austria believes that free expression and the fight against hate speech must go hand in hand. There are not contradictory objectives, but complementary pillars of open and resilient societies. One point must remain clear: the protection of minorities, who are often the first victims of hate speech, is non-negotiable. Words can and do become weapons. Hate speech is a potent driver of societal polarization, conflict, and in extreme cases, atrocities and wars of aggression. Austria actively promotes intercultural and interreligious dialogue through a range of initiatives, including our annual Intercultural Achievement Award. As a firm advocate of digital humanism, Austria promotes the ethical governance of technology that puts human dignity and rights at its core. We welcome the European Union's concrete measures in this field. We heard about them, including the AI Act and the Digital Services Act, yet the legislation alone will not suffice. We must complement it with robust education, inclusive policymaking, and sustained intercultural dialogue to foster trust, empathy, and social cohesion. Let us work together to ensure that technology uplifts rather than divides. And let us always remember, respect for human dignity and human rights must remain at the heart of every innovation. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
I thank the DPR of Austria, and now I give floor to DPR of Fiji.
Thank you very much, Chair, and also this is the streamlined version of our statement. Hatred, conspiracy theories, and prejudice infiltrate our societies and affect all of us. We are flooded by information and disinformation more than ever before, both on and offline. But no one is born to hate. Hate is learned and can be unlearned. And with this, we thank the Permanent Mission of Morocco for its leadership and the contributions of the UN and panelists for this international commemorative event. The devastating effect of hatred is sadly nothing new. However, its scale and impact are now amplified by information technologies and AI since the adoption of Resolution 75/309 in 2021. Hate speech, including incitement, has become one of the most common ways of spreading divisive rhetoric on a global scale, threatening peace around the world. The theme for today's commemoration is therefore timely, and countering hate speech is more urgent in this modern day where information technology is affecting our societies. Biased algorithms and digital platforms are spreading toxic content and creating new spaces for harassment and abuse. The UN and its member states must not lose sight of the darkest history of mankind that took place over hundreds of years to dehumanize blacks and Jews, which led to slavery and Holocaust. Those elements are still visible in our societies. We must institute a whole of government approach that guard against similar sentiments today. And also, as we have noticed, online platforms must also take the lead role. UNSG's sentiments a few years ago remain relevant, and I quote, "Hate speech is an alarm bell. The louder it rings, the greater the threat of genocide." Chair, with this, we reiterate our call for the need to work together to tackle the root causes and drivers of hate speech, including the means such as AI, as well as the need for partnership to institute safe space for victims. Thank you.
I thank the DPR of Fiji. Dear colleagues, unfortunately, we have to liberate the room, and we still have 10 speakers. Unfortunately, we cannot make it, so I would like to beg you to forgive us, and please send your statement to the Secretariat or to the Mission of Morocco, and we will make the compilation of all the statements. Before giving the floor to my dear Virginia Gamba, I would like to thank all the panelists, all delegations. We heard very strong messages. We had very deep and very substantive intervention. And if there is just 3 short messages we have got this morning. First of all, fighting the hatred is collective responsibility. Second, the fighting hatred starts within the family. Fighting the hatred starts with the responsibility also with religious leaders, civil society, and the centrality of the role of the United Nations. That's I think the strongest message that if I may sum like this, and I give the floor to my good friend and my partner in this fight. Virginia,
crime in good, not partner in crime, partner in good. Just to remind you, this is not a one-day event, it's a whole week. Yes. And as such, we invite you to all the side events that are happening, starting tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the morning, on the 15th floor, room 1523. The Granada Declaration on Islamophobia will be discussed. I think tomorrow, also on the 15th floor, room 1520, will be prevention of hate speech. OSCE will be fundamentally discussed there and co-organized with them. We have got an exhibit in the visitor center in the lobby at 13:15, that's 1:15 on Srebrenica. And on Wednesday the 18th, we have got this opportunity. First, 08:30 in the morning on my floor, 31st floor, a meeting on the Gariwo Organization for Partnerships. But more importantly, at 3 to 4:30 in room 11 here is the Partnerships for Action, which is exactly what the ambassador has just mentioned. We will then really unpack this forward, and anyone that wishes to speak on what they can do, then please, room 11, Wednesday the 18th, 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.